Staying consistent, I move with the clock. I'm in the zone, I'm not casting a stone. I'm finna stand on a rock, firm foundation. I got that dog in me, like 101 Dalmatian. I got girl with me, so I knew that I'm still finna make it. I'm still finna take it. I hopped in the ring and I'm still going crazy. I cut off this sin like I just got a taper. I walk in the storm and then God gave me favor. I'm still going forward. I just had to lock in the Lord. I knew that I'm finna make it. Throwing my old self, he got deported. Shout out to the king and I'm finna take
Let's get it.
Incredible start to your guys' Wednesday, or maybe even because of tuning in at the midnight point of your Tuesday, whatever the case may be. I appreciate you guys for joining me or tuning in whenever you guys are. As I said, I'm your host, Zach Shoemaker, and today I've got a loaded episode packed for you guys with all kinds of important things I want to get into today. We're going to start off with the verse of the day breakdown and then go into the Eternal Echo segment. And I'll be going from Genesis to Revelation, the mission to echo his eternal power. We'll be getting into a segment about faith and works and what that is, and if you need works to be able to get salvation. Then I'll be able to get into Hardwood realities, where the raw authenticity of the hardwood echoes truth. In that part of the show, I'll be diving into the Oklahoma City Thunder team preview, as well as the Indiana Pacers team preview. Then I'm going to also be discussing real quickly a recap on the biggest news for the Philadelphia 76ers, which was getting Joel Embiid to agree to an extension. I'll be touching up on that as well. Then to conclude the show, I'll be hopping into combat currents, unmasking combat currents of today's fight world. And on that part of the show, I'll be diving into a weekend fight recap. All kinds of big fight news I want to get into today. That's going to be a great part of the show. You guys are not going to want to miss that. And really, legitimately, right after that part of the show, I'll be diving into an update on the heavyweight division in boxing. I believe it's at one of the best positions it's ever been at least in a very, very long time. And I'll be diving into that to let you guys give an insight into what the heavyweight division of boxing is currently looking like. I'll also then be wrapping up the show by diving into Conor McGregor's plea for a fight date, as well as the potential Devin Haney and Sean O'Malley fight after the Twitter beef that those two have been going through. That's what I've got for you guys on today's episode of the SchuZ Show. So as I said, you're not going to want to miss it. 3 parts of the show, 3 parts that you should all want to tune in for and enjoy. And so with that being said, let's get into the most important part of the show, as I always like to start off with, and that is the verse of the day. We'll be able to go right from the verse of the day into Eternal Echoes, but I just want to make sure I state the verse of the day for you guys at the start of the show. And it'll also be going down along the bottom of you guys' screen so you guys can reflect on this verse, meditate on this verse throughout the entire duration of the show and whenever you guys tune into this show. So let's get to it. Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 and 9. For it is by grace you have been saved, through faith. And this is not from yourselves, it is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 and 9. That is the verse of the day. Now, let's hop right into Eternal Echoes, because this is what I'm going to break down this verse and get into a discussion today. So Eternal Echoes is from Genesis to Revelation, the mission to echo his eternal power. I want to make sure that I give you guys an intro to this part of the show, because I'll be honest with you guys, this is one of those parts of the Bible that is very, very difficult to understand. Thus why we have created a lot of controversy within the church, because of the debate regarding faith and works and whether or not works is required for salvation or not. And to be honest, this is one that I feel is very difficult to grasp until you've experienced it. Those of you that are listening to this right now that have fully committed your life to Jesus Christ and you are living for him, you understand that when that transition happens, this just makes crystal clear sense and there's not much room for debate. But when you are in the immature stages of a relationship with God, or maybe not even in a relationship yet, this can be very confusing. And that is why I wanted to make sure, and I prayed about this, to make sure that God is able to help me speak truth to you guys and try to provide this answer, this decision with as much guidance to make it make sense for everybody, regardless of whether or not and where you stand in your walk with Jesus. And so I recognize that it may not make perfect sense for everybody, but I'm going to try to convey this message in a way that helps others to understand this. So I created this little slogan, if you want to call it, for this episode and this segment, because I feel like this can help set this entire discussion up. And here it is. Our ticket to heaven has nothing to do with works, but once the ticket has been punched, you desire to work for him. So this will be broken down throughout the entire duration of this show. But I do want to give you guys a little story time to kick off this after I gave you guys that little slogan. Because when we talk about life and works, let me just give you guys insight before I dive into this scripturally. When I was going through high school, I attended at the beginning portion, I should say middle school started in, and then I went for my freshman year at a Christian high school. And we would have, I can't recall exactly, but I want to say it was every other, if not, it was at least once a month, but I believe it was every other week. But we would have a give back day essentially, or a community service day. And when we would go and embark on these missions per se, we would get the day off of school. It would turn into a half day of sorts, and we would go out and there would be some form of community service. Whether that was to go hand food out to the homeless, whether that would be to go paint someone's house or help them with this, that, or the third, so on and so forth. Okay, but we would get the day off of school, and when I look back at that time in life, I recognize that those days would be a day in which I would look at them and say, hey, I don't get to learn at school today. It's going to be an easy day. I like the sound of that. And at the same time, I also recognize that I started in my other areas of life recognizing that, hey, well, I'm doing enough work. I'm doing enough service and community work. I don't have to go do something outside of these activities. If there came something in life that I was supposed to go do, whether that be with church or family or something, or even just a simple, small act of kindness just in my day-to-day life, I would fathom and say, I'm already good. I've done enough now. And I reflect on that time in life because I was doing works. They were what God called us to do. But when I reevaluate my life at that point and when I was where I was at that point in my life, if I'm going to be honest with you guys, ultimately I'm not the judge of everything. But I'm not sure if I'd be saved with where I was at my relation, my walk with God at that point in time. If I were to take a guess, I honestly would say I don't believe that I would have attained salvation at that point in life. But I was doing the works that God would essentially call us to. But I didn't have a close relationship and I didn't have faith in Jesus. And I looked at all of these different components of what we were called to do at school. And it's a good idea, sure. It influenced the youth to go give back and make an emphasis, yes. But my mentality wasn't right. It was a checklist. It was a sense of I'm doing what God essentially wants me to do. I'm doing enough. And that wasn't right. Because I don't believe that would have led to anything in my walk with God. I didn't necessarily get closer to God just because I was doing it. But I didn't realize that at that point in time. This is me reflecting at this point in life. And so that's a story, and I'll actually utilize this and go deeper into the story a little bit later in the segment. But I just wanted to set you guys up to get a visualization that in today's show, I know that there's going to be a lot of stuff where I'm going to utilize the word. But we have got to a position in the church where there's debate consistently in regards to scripture and the translation, what you interpret it as, and so on and so forth. And so what I feel and I felt led to do is share some more testimonies, more so than I do at least a lot of the time. And so I'm going to share a lot more testimony with you guys because you guys could all say, well, this is what the word says. I view it this way or that way. But I'll be honest with you guys. Sometimes it's just as simpler to hear how God's worked in through somebody. So that's one of the examples I'm going to provide with you guys for you guys today. But that does not mean I'm not going to get into the word because I am one that bases everything around the word of God. And so let's hop into it now. Because like I said, there is a massive, massive divide within the church when it comes to works and faith. And if those two things together is what leads to salvation, or whether or not it is faith alone, and that leads to salvation, and through that, then we begin to do works. That's where the debate is, and it separated the church in so many different aspects and ways because of this. And my direct answer to you is this. Works are not needed to get to heaven. Works will not lead to salvation. That is not accurate to any extent. Because Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 and 9, it reads this, for it is by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not from yourselves. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. I talked about the great divide within the church, and there are certain branches of the church that believe that works are what rise you up in God's kingdom. They get you to salvation. They give you more rewards and whatnot you might want to say in heaven. And so the Catholic faith specifically, and others, they point to a few pieces of scripture to back up the necessity of works with faith to get you to salvation. But this is a very misunderstood conception, and I'll be quite frankly honest with you guys. It causes lives to be lost because of this influence has been placed. I understand where this theology is coming from, but the way we're portraying it and the importance of works is quite frankly, you are ruining lives and it is leading to death. It is a serious matter, and we are not helping others grow because all we're doing is saying, if you do work, you're going to get to heaven. That is not accurate at all. It is causing lives to be lost. And I said that there's some verse that they're going to point to. There are a couple. Here's probably the main one, or the primary one that's going to be discussed. And I'm going to read the whole thing because I want to bring clarity to this and break this down for you guys. So one of the most likely scriptures that's going to be pointed to in regards to this theology is James chapter 2, verses 14 to 26. And it reads this: "What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save them? Suppose a brother or a sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, 'Go in peace, keep warm and well fed,' but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. But someone will say, 'You have faith, I have deeds. Show me your faith without deeds, and I will show you my faith by my deeds. You believe that there is one God. Good. Even the demons believe that and shudder. You foolish person, do you want evidence that faith without deeds is useless? Was not our father Abraham considered righteous for what he did when he offered his son Isaac on the altar? You see that his faith and his actions were working together, and his faith was made complete by what he did. And the scripture was fulfilled that says, Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness, and he was called God's friend. You see that a person is considered righteous by what they do and not by faith alone. In the same way, was not even Rahab the prostitute considered righteous for what she did when she gave lodging to the spies and sent them off in a different direction? As the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without deeds is dead." You read that at first thought, and like I said, I can completely understand where you read that, and you essentially and very quickly jump to a conclusion and say, well, works is definitely needed. The truth is that yes, works are going to come when faith is involved. But faith is always the common denominator, regardless. Faith must be present. If you have faith, you're going to have salvation. I mean true faith, because true faith will lead to good works. That is going to be the influencing factor to want to go and pursue the way of God. And when you read what I just discussed here, the interesting thing is that it actually backs up the belief that faith must come first and that it leads to works. Notice that throughout the entirety of that scripture that I just read, faith was always mentioned there. Faith and then works. It's not just faith, no, but faith is going to be present, and in that faith it will lead to works. It's a guarantee. I'm going to look at scripture that says that in a few minutes. And here's the thing, I took this directly from Bible reference. I want to make sure I quote them because they said it perfectly. I didn't want to add anything or take anything away from what they said here when they broke this down. I just want to make sure that I get this clearly messaged out to you guys. They say this: "It's crucial to note that in the original Greek, James uses the phrase he pistis for that faith. The word he is important because it narrows the scope of what James is referring to. In this case, it points back to what was said in the phrase just before. James specifies a person who says he has faith but does not have works. James then questions whether or not that faith, one which does not result in good works, can save. This is why most translations translate this as this faith or such faith." What he essentially is saying is that when you talk about one's faith, he's looking at the grand scheme of things. One that claims to say they have faith, you will therefore means that the Holy Spirit is going to work in and through you. It's going to transform you to want to pursue God, and that means you're going to start pursuing one, having a desire to work for him. But it's not saying that faith is going to need works to bring salvation to you. It's clearly making a statement here that says that faith, referring to if you have a faith that doesn't bear fruit, essentially, that's not a life-changing or a saving faith that you're going to attain. That is a verbal one, and most likely it's a belief. I'll get into that in a second as well. So the question this brings up is whether or not you truly have faith. Because true faith results in a complete transformation, rebirth of life that puts to death that old you. I've discussed this many times before because it's essential. I talked about this just a few minutes ago. When I was in high school, I didn't have what I believe a saving faith. I believed in God, but so did the demons. It just says that in scripture right there. Satanists believe in God. Doesn't mean they're going to heaven. I believed in him, but I did not have faith in God. Therefore, I had actions. I did the good things. I did so many nice things. And from the outward looking in, a lot of people would look at me and probably say, yeah, he was a good guy. He was nice. He did this, that, and the third. Sure. But that's not going to get me to heaven. What I can say is that there was a transformation that when August 3rd of 2022 came around and my life changed forever, all of a sudden I started having true faith in God. And that's now grown to this point. I hope it continues to grow. I pursue that. And in that growth, the Holy Spirit's worked in and through me to give me a desire to want to do works. But I didn't get saved that night on August 3rd when Jesus saved my entire life by simply doing a work. It was him, and I put my faith and trust in him. And at that point, I know I was saved. And since that point, yes, I've gone forward and done works. And I just want to add this real quick. It's a little sidetrack, but I just felt this kind of get placed in my heart. When we base it around works, how much works is going to get you salvation? That's where it gets confusing because there's nowhere in the word that says this much is going to get you to there. You need to understand that works is not a measurement stick. It's not a measuring stick. It's not going to be you do this, you do that to get a total, complete production of what your works are. No, it's you break it down and whatever God placed on your heart, one might be more than the other, but it's following God's calling for your heart. And that's the work he called you to. Just going forth and just carrying out simple works here and there is not going to lead to anything. And so let's continue this now, getting back on track. Faith and belief is different. This is why I hinted at it a few seconds ago. I want to dive into this now because faith is what leads to salvation. Belief does not, because demons believe in God. When we look at the world, there is a very strong understanding that we need to bring more emphasis on, because this understanding is what's causing a lot of lives to be lost. And I don't mean on earth per se, partially sure, but I mean eternally, because that's what matters at the end of the day. A lot of people out there that are Christians, they believe in God. They believe that he is real. They believe in Jesus, and this may all vary to certain extents, but that's belief. Belief is not going to lead you to salvation, because Satanists believe in God, and so do demons. Faith is what leads to salvation. Surrendering your life, having faith and trust in God, and allowing him to fill you up and work in and through you, and having that relationship with Jesus, that is what starts this whole process of actually bringing you to Jesus and having to walk with him. It's not just belief, folks. Therefore, I want to continue this because works are evidence of salvation, but it's not the source of it. Let me say that one more time because I think this is very, very important. I want to make sure that this part gets made clear and settles down in your guys' minds. Works are evidence of salvation, not the source of it. Faith is the source of salvation. But the evidence from the outward looking, if you want to see if somebody possibly is that and you want to be a reflection of Jesus, you're going to look at people that look like Jesus that actually carry out his calling for you. And it's going to be the evidence that points to salvation. But in and of itself, that's not going to be the answer. So the second you make it about works to get to heaven, people's lives and relationship with God will be hindered, because no matter what actions you do, it does not get you to heaven. Faith is the only way. For those of you that want to teach that work, do this good thing, do this good thing, do this good thing, and you're going to get to heaven, you're going to have all these rewards in heaven, you're going to have this, that, and the third, I'm going to be quite frankly honest with you. If you're not going to be truthful in that statement and discuss that faith is the number one thing, And all those other works are great, but if it's not inspired by the Holy Spirit and if he's not working in and through you and that person does not actually have faith, that person's potential opportunity to go to heaven is quite frankly going to be slim to none, because there has to be actual faith in Jesus for this to be true. You cannot be teaching one just to go do works and do what the Bible teaches, but not to actually have a relationship with God. I can go read any book in the world right now, and it might be a book of knowledge. It might teach me how to go do something, and I can go do all these different things and follow what it does. That doesn't mean I am now that author per se. That does not mean that just because I have an understanding of what this book does and what this book says, that all of a sudden I'm going to become this perfect person and have actually understand who the author is or whatnot. I have to fully be wise and understand that I have to have faith with God. It's not just following it up. I don't know who he is. I can grow in any book in the world. What's different between a book that I can go pick up at Barnes & Noble or the biblical book of the Holy Bible when I'm trying to grow to God? That has to be a differentiating factor, and that would be it. That being said, though, now it's time to flip the script a little bit. I've alluded to this throughout this entire part now in the segment, that faith needs to happen first, and that is the one that's going to lead to salvation. But works must be present. If works are not present, your faith is not a saving faith. And that is a fact. Because now that we've got the foundation understood, that works will not lead you to salvation, it is faith and faith alone is going to lead you to salvation. Now let's take it to the next step. That ticket's been punched. So what? Now that the ticket's been punched, you've been filled by the Holy Spirit, now there's going to be a change of your heart and a new desire that's going to be placed within you, and that's going to continue to fester and grow in your life. And therefore, there's going to be change that has to be reflected in your lifestyle. So let's dive into those things now. John chapter 15, verses 1 through 17. Yes, it's going to be long once again. Like I said, this is a very important message, and I want to make sure I give you guys the full context of everything. Let's dive in right into it now. John chapter 15, verses 1 through 17. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me, as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I had learned from my Father I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit, fruit that will last, and so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. This is my command: love each other. We have to understand that the very first aspect is that God is the vine. He is the root of the tree. He is the tree. Now, we're called to be fruit, and essentially you can replace fruit with works if you want. Those are what we distribute because of our what we're connected to. If that vine is separated from the branches, which is us, there is no fruit that can be bared. We can try, we can do whatever we want, but we don't have a relationship with God. And we know throughout many, many other passages in Scripture that we need a relationship with God. And that's what we need to go to heaven. When we have the branch, and when we are these branches, we must be connected to God. And essentially what you're looking at there is that's faith. That's trusting and giving your life over to Jesus, allowing him to bring life into you, to change you. And through that transition, you're going to be able to bear fruit. That's what God calls us to. Because faith in Jesus creates a relationship with him. And at that point, you're adopted into his family. You're attached to his vine. And then you begin to bear fruit. Or as I said, works. And I think that's just a very, very important thing. Because we have to understand that we are not responsible to just go do works in and of itself by ourselves. We need to be attached to the ultimate branch, the vine of God. That is what we're called to do. And I told you guys I want to share testimony stories throughout this entire segment. So here's another one I want to share because my story, and I've reflected this a couple of times, I had so many instances where I would do these works throughout my life. Particularly, let's look at high school and early college. I would go and pursue, and I'd do certain works, but like I said, it was a checklist for myself. I would look at something and I'd say, oh, I did this good. I'm good for the next week or 2 weeks or month or year, whatever it was. And that was good for me, but it was always a burden. It was never something that I was excited for. And let me just be honest about this next part I'm going to share with you guys, because those that know me know I don't like to do this part at all. I don't like discussing any of my works. I like to keep it quiet. Those closest to me even get mad at me sometimes because I don't like to share it. And they might find out later on, or if they even find out of something I did, and I don't like to share it. But I felt that I needed to do this just so that people can get a better understanding and hear the personal testimony. And so here it is. I'm just going to share it to you guys. I'm not going to give the great details into it, but I just really want to just make sure that people understand this translation and transition in life and transformation that God ultimately brings in and through us, because it is critical to understand. Because it is what I've heard so many other stories from other people, but I know specifically in my life, this is my testimony, this is my story, and I've experienced it, and so I know it's truth. But I would go through this time, like I said, it was a checklist, it was good, but it always felt exhausting or burden. And they were always things that glorified God, but it wasn't fun. It was always a burden, as I alluded to. But something changed, though, on August 3rd. When August 3rd hit, and I wouldn't say actually was that night, because that night was just a crazy night, and I transformed my life, gave my life over to Jesus, and then it was a growing process, and it still is a growing process to make me more and more mature in my faith. But I'd say after a few weeks, specifically, I remember things got placed in my heart to want to start giving back. Not like anything before, and it was no longer a burden. It was an inspiration within me. And in that inspiration, I had a desire to want to go and help others, to do something. And I felt led to go do a certain act. And I decided, you know what? I just wanted to do it. It wasn't like I had to do it. Just I had this idea and I had this excitement to go do it. And I did it. And it essentially became my monthly celebration for what God did for me on that day. And there's many other things, a different service I might do throughout the month as well. But there's specifically one major one I like to do each and every single month. But something drastically changed. It was no longer something that was a burden or something that I was not excited for. It was something that I longed for, desired for, and I grew closer to God, I felt like, in those moments. And I wanted to do these really, really badly. Like, it was something that I wanted to make it a part of me, and I just felt desired. I felt rejuvenated after doing it. It was a transformation kind of time span of when I was able to go and do these give back monthly things in my life. It's something that I truly enjoyed. And so I recognize that there is a transformation, that when I had faith in Jesus first and foremost, and I know that I was saved at that point in time, that he then started changing me. He changed the way of all my different sinful ways of life. He made me bring wisdom and understanding of how I had to get rid of those aspects of life, as I've discussed many times before. But he also inspired me to actually go do these works, and I wanted to do these works, and I started doing it. But it wasn't for my glory. It wasn't for me. It wasn't because I had a checklist. It wasn't because someone told me to do it. It was rejuvenating. It was exciting. It was great. That is the transformation that God is talking about throughout the entire Word of God. It's the transformation when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, your life is going to change. It is a guaranteed thing. You will change. It will change you from the inside out, and you're going to want to go and be the light, go and change the world, and do what God's called you to in your life. That is what happens when you give your life over to Jesus. But I do want to make sure that I take a little bit of a guidelines for you guys now, because what I realize is that there are some things that we need help evaluating. Because when you are changed or whatnot, you can still wrap your mind up into a sense of, I need to do this, that, and the third. And as you grow more and more mature in faith, you understand this better and better. But there is a checklist I created for you guys I want to share with you guys to wrap this part of the show up with. And that is to help you guys and what to watch for when you are doing works for him. Because I want you to make sure these things I'm going to list are things that you need to keep an eye on, that if any of these things apply to you when you're doing works, you are probably doing it wrong. And it's either from a standpoint of being immature and it's just not needed in your faith, but you think it is and you're having the wrong mindset, or you are wrapped up in the transition portion of life where you don't even have faith yet, but you're doing these works to try getting salvation. And that's not how it works. So here's a few things that I want you guys to keep an eye on. One of which is the approval of others. Matthew chapter 6, verses 3 and 4 says this: "But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you." I just alluded to this just a few seconds ago. I don't like sharing about my stories, what I give back and whatever it is. I like to keep that quiet. I don't want anybody knowing about it. That's the way I like to roll, and that's the main reason right there, because of what Matthew chapter 6, verse 3 through 4 says. But I want to keep it real with you guys, because this is something that I recognize and I see, and it's disappointing in today's world. Because so many people have a love for getting attention because of the works. There should be a distaste for that. I honestly, I hate when people have an idea and want to praise me for what I do when it's good or whatever. I don't like that. And I'm just being 100% genuine and authentic with you guys. I don't like being praised. I try doing it where nobody recognizes it. And that's the way I like to live my life. I don't want people knowing about it. And that's what the word of God calls us to and commands us to do. And this is what's critical here, because in today's social media age, so many people are seeming to want to go and do these good acts of God, these works of God, giving back, whatever the case may be. And it appears from the outside looking in, at least, that not only is both your hands able to see, both right and left hand able to know what you're giving back, but so is everybody around the world now able to see your act of kindness. And so if your works are for anybody other than God, then you need to recognize that and self-reflect. You need to stop doing it for social media, in front of others, to impress others, to hope others think higher of you. It is for God and it's for Him alone in which we are supposed to be doing acts of kindness. When we get caught up in this understanding that, hey, I'm going to go give back so that I get praised on social media, others can start to see me in a different light. I can change how I'm viewed by the public and my PR team. I'm going to do this, that, and the third, and make sure I position myself where I'm going to go do something nice. But guess what? I know there's a camera right here. I know there's a lot of people here. And I know it's in a large crowd here. And guess what? I'm probably going to be posting this on TikTok and social media in a few hours, a few days. That's not right. That is not what God calls us to do. It's not for any of that in which we're supposed to be giving back. We are supposed to be giving back for the glorification of Him and Him alone. If somebody happens to see you doing it, so be it. You can't go and just make sure that nobody in the world ever sees you, because if God calls you to do something, go forth and carry that out and do it. But don't let there be any self-pride or self-glorification or self-righteousness that you are a good person just because you did good works. No, that's God blessing you with the ability to go and do that. Second, for your benefit. If you're doing acts of kindness or you're doing these works and you have a mindset in the back of your mind saying, well, I'm going to do this because I do know Scripture does say that we can be rewarded in certain senses, even though you might not even be familiar with what that actually means. And it's time for that's a discussion for another time. But it's not for a gift or a blessing or what you only want to do. No, it's not for your benefit that you're doing this. You're doing this because you've been inspired by the Holy Spirit. You love God so much and you're so thankful for what He's done for you at the cross on Calvary that you want to go forth and you want to follow Him and give your life over to Him. That it is inspired and led by the Holy Spirit, not by you. Because if we can go and map out our calendar and say, hey, on this day, I'm going to go and give back because this is what I want to do. It's easier for me. I can afford this. I can do it this time, whatever, because it just works out for me. That's not really it. There can be that. I said, that's what I do. To a certain extent, I do that each and every single month. But the works that really are a reflection of God is that if I go one day a month and I give back, but the rest of the month I'm living in sin or I'm not living to glorify God, and an old person is struggling to open the door or something, I don't help them open that door, I don't help them across the street or something, whatever the case may be, then That's quite contradictory right there. That's quite hypocritical right there. And I think it is important that this is something that we don't just do once a month and we'll schedule it when it works best for us. This is a lifestyle change that as the Holy Spirit places something on your heart, no matter where you're at, what you're doing, if you can afford it, whatever the case may be, you go forth and you carry that out. You're supposed to do this because of what you know about him and that you want to follow him. And that will reflect in how you live your life. It must be in faith, and that leads to the information and guidance of the Holy Spirit to carry out the works in which he's called you to do. The next one, it cannot be forced. And this is something I really want to go into because I talked about this testimony, this story of mine in the beginning of the show. But when we force works upon people, it can easily burn them out and lead them astray into believing the wrong things. It must be inspired by the Spirit. And this is something I do want to make sure we have a better understanding on. And each and every single person, this can be different. Each parent must use discernment when it comes to their kids on how often and how demanding you're going to be. It's based upon the kids' ages, based upon so many different factors, and what you need to do and how much you're going to push them to give back and have the type of heart to be a woman or man of God. But you have to balance that with, obviously you want them to be that, but also you want to make sure that you are being a good influence on them. You're teaching them how to give back and what the works of God is and how to live out the word. And so that's still important. We still need to keep teaching kids that and how to do them, what that looks like. But there can be a sense that we push it too much, that there's such a heavy burden that you're saying, parents are telling the kids so much, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. And it creates this understanding in a child that can really hinder their walk with God, just as it can with anybody else, but especially a child. When they start to believe that it's all about works, it's all about what I can do to attain justification, it's all about what I can do to have a relationship with God. It's not that. So yes, be a great role model and influence, but don't force it too much. Obviously, I said use discernment. Still be an influence, still be a role model, but you need to use discernment as a parent in that regard. Just be aware of that. And I said earlier, but I can speak to personal testimony of this. The school situation I was at, it was not a bad thing at all. I don't want to call it out and say it was a horrible idea. No, it was good. They were teaching us how to give back. But the truth is that doesn't change who the kids are that give back. Anybody can go be a nice person. That doesn't lead to change. And all I recognize is that I started feeling good enough. When I look at myself, I was like, I'm good enough. I'm good enough. I've done enough. I've attained this, that, and the third. And it started almost even creating a dislike for service because it became mandatory. It became something that I was just having to do. It wasn't inspired by God at all. And so there has to be a certain sense that if you're truly the true works of God that you're carrying out, it can't be forced upon you. The works that God's calling you to are things that He's placed on your heart to go do, and you carry those out. And just to make sure this is clearly known as well, it doesn't mean that works for Him are always going to be easy, or that there's not going to be trials, tribulations, or issues in those works. But what I can promise you is this: there will be a peace and a strength within you when carrying these out so that it produces true joy. So often we can go down this journey and we recognize that there's going to be trials and tribulations, but I'll be the first to say this, once again, from personal testimony experience, that when you're doing works that might be challenging or difficult or whatever the case may be, or maybe even dangerous, you're not worried any longer. You're excited doing, you have confidence that if God called you to do it, He's got a plan, a purpose for you, and you're going to want to carry that mission out. And so He will supply you with the peace and the strength to carry those missions out and those callings to carry out the works of God. Lastly, that it makes you feel better about yourself. Works cannot be something to make up for something. It can't be to get right with God, and it can't make you feel as if you are a better person because you do it. That is not even faith in and of itself, because true faith is understanding that, guess what, God? I'm not good. There is no other way around this. I need help. I'm not complete. I sin. I screwed up. I'm not good, and I deserve the punishment and the wrath of the God Almighty. But you died for me. You love me more than I could ever fathom or imagine, and therefore, here I am. What do you want from me, God? I already know I'm not perfect. I know I can't attain anything with you, but you've given me this option to have faith in you and to experience eternal life with you. And so if works creates a sense of making up for something bad you did, or to get right with God, or make you feel as if you were a better person, you're not doing works in the right way. That's essentially looking for works to acquire justification or sanctification. Not accurate. Because guess what, folks? God loves you regardless of what you have done, what you are doing, what you're going to do. And works are not going to make him view you any differently. When you surrender your life to God, he truly surrender your life to God. He is fully aware of that, and he knows that you've given your life and that there's a fellowship and a bond right there. He's going to start changing you. And he knows that what's going to come from that. He knows the fruits and the beauty and the great life that you're going to be able to live to glorify him now in this walk with God on earth. He knows it's already going to happen. He already knows what you're going to do in your life. And he loves you. He died on the cross before you ever were born, knowing exactly what you're going to do. So you don't have to question that. He loves you more than you could fathom imagine. That goes for those of you that are believers or not believers. He loves you. For those of you that are truly a part and adopted in the family of God, then you already know what that love is like. For those of you that aren't yet, he loves you more than you can ever fathom imagine. There's no decision you can make greater than being adopted into the family of God. And I encourage you, open up to it. Just give it an opportunity, a chance to trust in your Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, because he died for you. He loves you more than you can fathom or imagine, and he just wants to have fellowship with you. And I promise you, it is going to be a better life with him than it is without. I can assure you of that, because he wants a relationship with you. Established, you will get to experience his love for you. You're going to want to give your life over to him to the full extent, and when that occurs, you will then decide to start giving your life over to him. And in that, you will bear fruit and you will start to experience, and that will result in you doing works for his kingdom. And that is why I said this in the beginning. Our ticket to heaven has nothing to do with works. But once the ticket has been punched, you desire to work for him. So for those that didn't pick up on what that slogan or that little sentence there I made up for you guys was, the ticket to heaven, that has nothing to do with works. That ticket to heaven is faith. Once that faith has occurred, the ticket's been punched and you've officially given your life over to God and you have faith now and you've been filled up by the Holy Spirit, you're going to desire to now go forth and do works for his kingdom. That's the way of life. It is not by works that you get to heaven. It is by faith and faith alone. So don't let anybody tell you differently. God loves you more than you can fathom or imagine. He wants you to have faith. Works should come from that true faith. That saving faith will result in works. But those works will not get you to heaven. Only faith will. I know that was a deep segment for today, and I really want you guys to be able to reflect on that as I go into this break. So the verse today will be on the bottom as well, but reflect on this verse throughout this next break. And as you guys listen to this, I just want you guys to be able to reflect on this throughout life, because this is a critical component, a very, very important discussion within the church. And I just want everyone to be able to experience truth here and experience the true walk with God, because he gives you guys a peace that's greater than anything you can fathom or imagine. And it's not about your works. It's about true faith. So I'll see you guys in a few minutes. May God bless you guys all, and I'll talk to you guys soon. God bless you guys.
Staying consistent, I move with the clock. I'm in the zone, I'm not casting a stone. I'm finna stand on a rock. Firm foundation, I got that dog in me, like 101 Dalmatian. I got girl with me, so I knew that I'm still finna make it. I'm still finna take it. I hopped in the ring and I'm still going crazy. I cut off this sin like I just got a taper. I walk in the storm and then God gave me favor. I'm still going forward. I just had the luck in the Lord. I knew that I'm finna make it. Doing my old self.
Welcome back, everyone, to the SchuZ Show. I'm your host, Zach Shoemaker, as a lot of you guys know me as SchuZ. And this will now be the second part of this next show, which is the Hardwood realities, where the raw authenticity of the hardwood echoes truth. 3 topics again today under this segment portion of the show, and it will be continuing the team preview theme. We have number 10, number 11 teams will be done and addressed today, which will be the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers. I then have one third topic I'll be getting to regarding Joel Embiid's extension with the Philadelphia 76ers. All right, so let's get right to it. Get right to it now with the Oklahoma City Thunder team preview. The Oklahoma City Thunder are a team. Let's get right to it now with the Oklahoma City Thunder team preview. So let's get right to it. The Oklahoma City Thunder is a team that is fair to say a lot of people could view as a contender this year. They are a team that had quite the year last year, what many would say a breakout season, and got their feet a little bit wet in that playoffs. But now that the young guys have gotten some experience now in the playoffs, a lot of people have now set their attention on recognizing that this team is not just a young up-and-coming team, but this team is a team that has quite frankly now arrived today and is ready to compete with the big dogs of the NBA. This team is not a team no longer that's just rebuilding, but this is a team ready to perform and compete for NBA championships right now at this point of the season and this time in life. And so let's break down what we've got in store with this Oklahoma City Thunder roster. At the head of this team, the go-to guy, the guy that has a legitimate chance of winning MVP this season, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He made his mark on the NBA and solidified himself as one of the premier players in the entire NBA this past season. He is a guy that has shown that he will be in the MVP discussions for years to come, and he's a guy that you can legitimately build an entire franchise around. He will be the star of this entire team, and he's not the only guy, though, because this is where I actually want to make sure I emphasize a certain point with you guys. There is a big three that has been brewing in Oklahoma City Thunder team that has... There's a big three in Oklahoma that I view as a team, as a big three that, and this, let me rephrase my apologies. The Oklahoma City Thunder have built and established now a big three in which I quite frankly am very, very enticed in. Because it's not just Shai Gilgeous-Alexander any longer. It is a big three that has been built by the Oklahoma City Thunder. This big three has been brewing now for a couple of seasons. And I understand why, but they are quite frankly very, very underrated. Because you could easily look at this big three and deem them as a team that could be one of the premier big threes in the entire NBA. That big three consists of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Chet Holmgren, and Jalen J-Dub Williams. These 3 guys are all 3 potential NBA All-Stars. Will it be this NBA season? I'm not quite positive on that, but I would be shocked if these 3 guys are not at one point or time an all-star in the NBA. All 3 of these guys have the capabilities of producing at an extremely high level. And when you talk about big threes in the NBA, we look at the likes of the Minnesota Timberwolves. We look at the likes of some of these other teams that have 3 legitimate stars. Well, let me introduce to you guys this big three that clearly should be right in the mix of those other great big threes in the NBA. Because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, and Chet Holmgren, all 3 have the potential to be NBA All-Stars. All 3 have the potential to legitimately lead an NBA team to an NBA championship. Those 3 should fit each other perfectly. You have a premier guard, a premier big, and you have a premier wing. That is the best way to possibly build a big three, and the Thunder have established that and built that. And not only that, but they have solidified those 3 as the faces of the team. Here's the unique thing about the Thunder, though, and why they are such an exciting team in the NBA. Because it's not just 3 guys that are leading this team and then they have a poor bench. But the bench is actually one of the best benches in the entire NBA as well, and I should say surrounding cast. Because you have 2 other guys that are alongside these 3, and Luguentz Dort and Isaiah Hartenstein, who I believe will be entering the starting lineup and will be solidifying that starting 5. Hartenstein was a big-time free agency signing that came over from the New York Knicks after a massive season last year with them, and he should be coming in to be the starting center, in my opinion, to start the season. Luguentz Dort has been a foundational core piece of this Thunder roster, and he will be present as well. But here's where it gets really exciting for the Oklahoma City Thunder. They have essentially what I like to call 6 starters. What do I mean by that, you might ask? Well, you have a guy that they also acquired in the trade involving Josh Giddey to bring in Alex Caruso. He fits this team perfectly. Josh Giddey could be potentially a better overall NBA player when it's all said and done, maybe. But Alex Caruso fits this team exactly what they needed. He's going to bring defense. He's a playmaker. He's going to bring veteran experience. And he's a guy that if you wanted to move Chet down to the center spot, Jalen running a small ball 4, and you throw Caruso in the 2 or 3's position, you could easily do that. And that could be your starting 5 and have Hartenstein be essentially your 6th man. So this team has 6 stars, as I like to call it. But that's not even it. Let's continue this team because, like I said, this team has a lot of depth. And so we go right to a guy that is a great pickup that will be heading into year 2, and that's Cason Wallace. And Cason Wallace is a guy that had a really, really good rookie season. I'll be honest, I think it was very underrated because he produced at a very high level, especially playing at big stake moments in the playoffs. He played great when it mattered in the NBA season, even though he was a rookie in limited time. And it wasn't a situation where just given the keys to have unlimited ability. He took full advantage of every minute he was given. And I think him heading into year 2 is a guy that could have an even larger role in this team and have a legitimate breakout season, really solidifying himself as one of the top premier backup point guards in the NBA. There won't really be an opportunity to go compete for a starting spot for him this year, but he can become one of the best bench players in the entire NBA this season. And then you head down and you have a battle between Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins, who essentially will be kind of competing for that other guard or forward spot, if you want to call it, in the depth chart. Both those guys were re-signed this past year, and I like both those guys. Both guys are easily guys I can count on being 8th, 9th, 10th man guys in rotation. Great guys that they've helped develop and rise up to this point in their careers, and both guys I feel fully comfortable playing in a playoff game or whatever the case may be. Now, there's another guy, though, that I want to discuss, Usman Dieng, who he's a guy that was drafted high, but hasn't quite panned out yet. He's shown flashes, but I'm not quite positive I'm going to say that he is a guy that you can count on yet. I don't want to say I'm going to give up on him per se, but he is a guy I would not be shocked to see maybe traded eventually or whatnot. But if he has a breakout season, this could be a massive boost to the Oklahoma City Thunder because he is a guy that does have essentially potential and he has the length and the body to be able to be a legitimate good-sized wing for them. And they don't have a legitimate backup small forward per se yet. I'm going to get into a couple other guys, but that is one aspect that I do look at and say, hey, if he takes a jump this year, would be huge for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Let's then head down to the backup power forwards, essentially, and you're going to have Kenrich Williams, Dylan Jones, who they just drafted this past year in the first round. Kenrich Williams has been a cornerstone of this team. He's been a part of the Thunder for now for a couple of seasons, has been a very, very big impact on this team as well, has been a good rotational player. And I like him right now. I'm going to give him the heads up to be the backup forward to start the season. But Dylan Jones is a very intriguing pickup that they had. He seems like a Sam Presti type of draft pick, a guy that you're going to get a steal in when they drafted him later in the first round because he knows how to excel in his role. He has capabilities of thriving if he has a larger role and opportunity, but he's more than willing to embrace whatever role it is that he's given. And I think this was one of the better draft picks in this year's draft. I think he's going to be a great opportunity to become the guy that actually gets rotational minutes, if not this season, for sure by next year, and really be that guy that's going to be a cornerstone bench piece to the Thunder in the future. And then you go back down to the backup center spot, Jalen Williams. He's going to be the guy that's going to be backing up Hartenstein, or if they decide to go with the Chet, Isaiah Hartenstein backup, then he'll be the third string, obviously. But we know his role, an incredible locker room presence. He plays his role to his perfection, and he's a guy that you can truly count on. So that's what you look at with this roster, and I love it. Like I said, you have a big 3. You have essentially 6 starters, and then you have great depth. And a lot of these guys are young. So when you talk about young, up-and-coming players, each and every single one of these guys have the opportunity to grow. What we saw last year, they could be completely different players this year, and that's exciting and enticing when you look at this team. Now, they did have a top pick this past year, Nikola Topic, who he's going to be out for the entirety of this NBA season, which is okay. He can develop, and he's going to be a guy to certainly keep an eye on because that's another young, up-and-coming player, and you allow him to go develop in the Thunder system. I would be shocked if he's not at least a good rotational player for this team. So he's not going to be playing this year, but he's something to keep an eye on going forward. Here's another exciting part about the Thunder, though, that you do have 3 two-way spots that are all locked in as of this point in time. You have AJ Mitchell, who I am very high on. Let me just say this. I believe that AJ has a chance to become a rostered player on this team by the end of the season. They don't have a specifically, exactly by positional basis. They don't have a locked in backup guard yet for the team. But AJ Mitchell certainly can be that guy for this team. And especially with Tobic being out for this season, I could see them promoting him, maybe even in training camp, because I really, really do like what he brings to the team. And I think he was an exceptional draft pick. Adam Flagler, Alex Dukas are their other two-way spots. Solid additions there. I'm not sure if they're going to earn promotions to the main team, but they're good players, solid two-way guys. That's who rounds out the two-way spot. Here's the thing I do want to look at, though. I don't know if this Thunder team is going to be exactly what we expect to see them at the start of the season, maybe even, but especially as the year progresses, because currently they have 14 guys, meaning they have one roster spot available to be able to go and sign somebody or acquire somebody, whatever the case may be. And what I look at right now is essentially you only have 13 available because I said Tobic is out for the season. And that's not really a situation you want to be in. 15 is what a lot of guys have, but when you have a guy for a season and you already have an open spot, only going into the season with 13 guys is not something that is something that you want to count on. And when I really do break down this roster, there are a couple of different holes that I will want to address for them. And this is where I could see them either signing somebody, acquiring somebody, whatever the case may be. And that would be, you talk about the backup center spot. I'm assuming you go Isaiah as starting spot, and then Chet's going to be power forward, which I think would be exceptional and perfect for him. And then you have Jalen Williams, but you don't have another guy backing him up. And Jalen, I'm comfortable with being the backup center, especially when you talk about Chet spilling minutes at center spot and whatnot. But getting that would be huge for them. And also, you don't have an established backup forward in terms of your guys. Aaron Wiggins is essentially who I penciled in at backup small forward, but he's a lot more, I'd say he's a lot more of a shooting guard than he is a small forward. And so if you could find a way to either have Dang, if he takes the massive jump this year and becomes that, great, as I already addressed. But if they have the opportunity to go acquire a veteran, proven small forward, would do wonders for this team. Would love that. Now, neither one of these issues are massive problems. Most likely, every team is going to make different trade accusations at the acquisitions at the trade deadline, and that's something to look forward to for the Thunder. But overall, this team is set. This is a team that would not shock me if they come away with the NBA championship this year. They have all the talent in the world. They are stacked top to bottom. A lot of guys are going to take even larger jumps this upcoming season. And ultimately, the Thunder are a team that, like I said, 1 year from now, we could be saying that they're going to try to be going back-to-back and winning another NBA championship. But the most exciting thing about this team is that they built themselves up the right way. This is a great organization, a great group of guys. Hard not to root for them. Of course, you're always going to root for your favorite team, but the Thunder are a team that's easy to get behind. And if they are able to go and have a great run, I don't think anybody would be against that. They built this team the right way. They're a fun, exciting group of guys. And I think this is a team that's going to be one of the most entertaining teams to watch, not just this season, but for the foreseeable future. So that's what I've got for you guys in terms of the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, let's head over to the Indiana Pacers and get into their team preview. The Indiana Pacers are a team that has made a rapid ascension to becoming a noteworthy NBA team. Most people won't consider them legitimate contenders this year, but they are certainly in the cusp of being a locked-in playoff team and a team that is, without a doubt, a threat and a team that you don't really want to play in the playoffs. First and foremost, this has to be headed by the main guy that has helped accelerate this rebuilding process, and Tyrese Haliburton. He's the guy that made a magnificent jump last season and became one of the premier guards in the entire NBA, an NBA All-Star, and a guy that was able to be a part of one of the greatest USA teams ever established. Now, he didn't get to play a lot of minutes with Team USA, but let me make this point clear. For young guys, being able to be around greatness is one of the greatest things that a young player can experience. And so, although Haliburton did not get extensive minutes in the postseason or with Team USA, did not get extensive minutes with Team USA, what Haliburton did get was being able to surround himself with some of the great minds and talents that the game of basketball has ever seen. And I have a good feeling that's going to reflect very positively on this upcoming season and his growth as a player. We saw some flashes of when he was able to get some minutes there with Team USA, but there's a legitimate chance that Haliburton makes another massive jump this season. Because not only is he a premier player already, but what he grew from and what he was able to attain and learn from in the Olympics, but also the way that this team has really been built around him now. So let's get into the rest of this roster that I'm very excited about, because you have another guy that they paired up with Haliburton to form a dynamic duo of sense and have another all-star, that's Pascal Siakam. We saw him because he was essentially a trade deadline acquiration of him at the deadline. And so they only got limited reps with each other. There wasn't a lot of chemistry that was able to be built last season. But what's exciting is now you have another whole entire offseason of growth between Haliburton and Siakam. And I can assure people that that is going to be noticeable this season. When you have an offseason of growing chemistry and you can go through an entire year together, chemistry is going to continue to grow. And so you're going to see those two establish themselves as a really good dynamic duo in the NBA this year. But it's not just with Siakam, because then you head down to his front court mate and Miles Turner. He's a guy that for many, many years people thought as a guy that could be traded or dealt away. And he has now established himself as a core piece of this team and has remained a Pacer for a very, very long time. He's going to be, once again, one of the premier rim protectors, a great lob threat, and a very, very under-the-radar center, quite frankly. And so between Miles Turner and Pascal Siakam, you really have built a very solid front court for them. Now, there's two other guys I really want to address that I'm excited about in the Pacers, because you could go a couple different ways with the way the starting lineup is going to look. When I look at the starting five, here's who I think is going to be starting alongside Haliburton, Siakam, and Turner, who are the three locks. Ben Mathurin, and I also think you're going to see Nembhard being a guy that's going to take that jump and he's starting for them. Why do you think I say that? Well, Mathurin, I think, is a little bit more clear. He was injured for the second half of last season, which we have to remember, because Ben Mathurin is a guy that has had an incredible start to his career so far. Injuries derailed it last season, and they were missing a legitimate starting player for the team. You have to recall that. But here's the thing that was really exciting for me when I looked at it. Andrew Nembhard had a much expanded role last season. When it came time to the playoffs, injuries built up, and we saw him take a massive jump. And that inspired me to say, you know what? I like what I saw there. If he can be even a shell of what that was, because then you're going to have to apply the other starters back into there and establish certain roles, he can be a legitimate starting shooting guard alongside Haliburton and form a very, very good backcourt out there in Indiana. I like what Andrew Nembhard's capable of bringing to this team, and I think if you have the starting five of Haliburton, Andrew Nembhard, Mathurin, Siakam, and Turner, that's going to be a very, very nice, solid starting five for them. But I said there's going to be other options as well. The one thing I would say is that six man is already locked. TJ McConnell is going to be the sixth man. He is one of the premier backup point guards in the entire NBA. He's a guy that anybody can count on. He will show up no matter what role you give to him, and he's a great locker room guy. He's going to be the sixth man for them. And then you look at the bench pieces, though, and here's why I said there's going to be some questions. You could start Nesmith. He has been a foundational guy, not a guy that you can go count on to go get unlimited buckets or whatever, but he plays his role perfectly. And so if you want to go make Mathurin or Nembhard a six-man and truly let them be the best six-man in the NBA potentially, then you could go start Nesmith, who's been starting over the past couple of seasons, and let him continue to fill that void and fill that hole for them out there in Indiana. So that's something you're going to look at for in terms of rotational aspects. Then you go to backup power forward. Obi Toppin's a lock for them there. He's been a reliable guy, had a breakout season last year. We finally got to see Obi get minutes. I love what I saw out there from Obi. And I think him getting that opportunity now to really excel with the bench unit is going to be huge for him in year two out there in Indianapolis. Then you go to the backup center spot. And this is a position spot that isn't as strong. It might be more so of a weakness, if you want to call it that, because you have Isaiah Jackson and James Wiseman. I like Isaiah Jackson. Not sure if I can consider him a legitimate backup center, though. And Wiseman's a guy who's obviously been disappointing throughout his career. What do I expect from him? There's not much. You know, it's obviously very limited in terms of that. We don't know. Could he have a breakout season? Sure. We've been saying that for many years. So there's not much I can really address in terms of Wiseman. But Isaiah Jackson, I do like him a lot. He's capable of it. But I don't know if they have a legitimate guy that if Turner were to get hurt or just spill minutes for whatever the case may be, that I would trust to run center. But then we go back up to power forward, and there's a guy that I am intrigued in. And that's Jarace Walker, a guy that was a top 10 pick just a year ago. And he was something I'm very, very high on. Whenever he's gotten an opportunity to get minutes, he's also shown flashes that he's more than capable of playing at the NBA level and at a high level in the NBA. And so what makes me really question and wonder here now is where's the opportunity for Jarace Walker? You know, personally, I could see this turn out to be a situation where we see him get dealt eventually in what could be a trade to acquire another star for the Pacers. Because Siakam's a lock now. He's going to be a core piece. And Obi Toppin's the perfect backup player. And so I don't know where minutes are going to come for Jarace Walker. However, if he gets the opportunity, they have extreme depth, and he's something you can certainly count on. And then you also have James Johnson, who's not going to be a guy that's going to play a lot of minutes, but he's essentially the bodyguard for the stars. He's going to be the bodyguard for Tyrese Haliburton. He's the guy that you're going to have to keep on that roster as a great locker room presence and a guy that's going to help keep the locker room in check. Then we go back up to another draft pick they just made this past year in Johnny Furphy, who I do like him a lot as well. He could be a guy that shoots the ball at a high clip. He's going to be able to be relied upon. I don't know if that's going to be something to count on him this season. It's more so, let him play in the G League this year, let him develop, and eventually we'll see him play in the rotation, next season or the following year. Then you also have Kendall Brown, who is on a partial guaranteed deal. I'm going to address him in a second, but he's a guy that's going to be heading to year 3, and he's a guy that hasn't shown a lot of flashes yet. He was a good player in college. Injuries have kind of hindered his career a little bit, but that's who you have in Kendall Brown. Here's the last guy that's currently on a guaranteed contract on the Pacers, and that's Ben Shepherd. Ben Shepherd is the guy that I also am quite high on in terms of his rotational aspect, what he can bring to the Pacers. He's not somebody that's going to be a legitimate superstar player or starter to any extent. Not even sure if he's going to be a locked-in starter, but he can be a 3-and-D option. He can shoot the ball. He's a lot more consistent, I'd say, and I trust him more so than I would trust Furphy at this point in time. But Ben Shepherd is the guy that I do like, and I think we're going to see him get an even larger expanded role. Possibly even, there is a chance, and we saw some flashes of it last year, that he could eventually take over the spot and become the backup or even the starting small forward. Like I said, if you want to move Nembhard or Mather into a 6-man and he takes over Nesmith's role. Not saying that's likely. I'm not going to favor that at this point in time, but that's certainly on the table, and I would not be against that at all. So that's what you guys currently have built out there in Indianapolis. I said just a few moments ago, the one part I'm really looking at that's going to be a training camp battle when I see this roster. I said Kendall Brown, he's on a partial guarantee. There's one spot that you essentially have 15 guys on guaranteed to any extent contracts right now. Kendall Brown would be the 15th man if I look at it right now in my eyes. And there's a guy that's signed to a non-guaranteed deal in Cole Swider. Just brought him in a couple weeks ago. I like what he brings to the table. He was with the Lakers originally, and then he transitioned over to Miami last year, and there were some good flashes. I really like what I saw from him. He's a guy that you could trust to go in and play the small forward or power forward and be a stretch forward for them. Not the best defensive player, but can be a guy that you can count on and go shoot the ball. Not going to be even a guy you're going to consider being in the rotation consistently, but being that third string depth piece, I like him. I count on him. I would trust him more so than I would trust Kendall Brown at this point in his career. From a health standpoint, veteran experience, also what he brings to the table. And so you could get off of the Kendall Brown contract quite easily. Only a partial guarantee right there. That's something to definitely keep an eye on, because I do think, and I would not be shocked to see Swider take that spot from Kendall Brown, or at least go into the two-way spots, what I'm going to address right now, and possibly have one of the 3 two-way guys get promoted to a standard contract, replacing Kendall Brown, and letting Swider then become a two-way contract player on the Pacers. Now, for those two-way spots I just hinted at, Enrique Freeman, a second-round draft pick this year. You have Quentin Jackson, Tristan Newton, also a draft pick this year. All 3 of those guys are guys that are solid additions to this team. I'm not sure any of those guys are guys I'd say will get promoted to the standard roster or standard contract this season. Enrique Freeman's a guy that can rebound at a very high clip. If you need him to go in there, possibly be that guy that becomes a center for them. Possible. Not sure on that yet. Quinn Jackson, I do like him a lot, though. Very explosive player. Can score when you let him get down in transition. He's shown flashes last year with the Pacers, but also with the Bulls and Wizards and his other stints in the NBA. Tristan Newton, he's got a winning DNA established within him. He's won at a high clip at UConn. He's won throughout his entire career. I like Tristan Newton as a good draft pick. That's who makes up the two-way spots for the Pacers this year. So ultimately, this roster has been established now. The Pacers are a team that when I look at, like I said, I don't want to consider them legitimate contenders right now. I don't have them favored to win the championship, but by every means necessary, they are a team that I could see make a position and make a threat in the Eastern Conference this year. You're not going to want to play this team. They have talent, but I see them more so slotting in towards the 4 or 5, maybe even 6 seed in the Eastern Conference this year. However, there is a path for them to become legitimate contenders. I alluded to the fact of Jarris Walker. Also, I just listed a lot of young guys that have talent, have shown flashes, and do have value within the NBA. And you have 2 legitimate all-stars in Haliburton and Siakam. I understand that a lot of guys aren't going to just be drawn to go play for the Pacers, but if a guy becomes available that you can trade for and acquire that is a legitimate all-star, that is a move that I would very, very like to see, because you have the pieces to acquire them between Jarris Walker and the young pieces, and that would make them take the jump to be a legitimate contender in the NBA. However, they could also have guys make the jump in Nembhard or Mather and that become all-stars too. Not ruling that out at all as well, because I do like what those 2 guys bring to the table. Very, very high in Nembhard, as I discussed. So those are things to keep an eye on. I do like to see one other aspect for them that is a little bit easier to replace. They do need more guard depth to become a legitimate contender as well, because right now you only have 2 guys that I'd count as legitimate backup point guards, or legitimate point guards on the roster. Behind Haliburton, you have McConnell. Yes, Nembhard can go spill minutes and become a backup as well, but preferably I like to have at the point guard spot 3 guys. And, if one of those guys go down, then you're in a lot of trouble. So if they can go acquire, I'm not saying anybody special. This is just a simple signing in free agency. Go pick up a guy. You have Markelle Fultz currently available in free agency. You have a couple other guys that are at the point guard spot in which you could identify and say, hey, here's the process. You're not being signed right now for one reason or another. You are a veteran. Here's our contract we can give you. Play this role. Try to earn yourself a spot on our team, and we go from there. So that's the only other thing I really want to address for the Pacers, because ultimately this is a team that's going to be in the playoffs. I like what they're building out there. Lots of guys to keep an eye on for potential jumps this upcoming season. And ultimately, though, this is a roster to keep an eye on because, like I said, I think Hardwood has a chance for a big jump. Nembhard could make that big jump. And this is a good team to keep an eye on this upcoming NBA season. So that's what I've got for you guys in terms of the Indiana Pacers team preview. The last segment I want to get into, you guys, with this part of Hardwood Realities is a quick segment in regards to what happened on Friday. A couple days late, obviously the first show since Friday. So let's get to it. Joel Embiid told Shams that he is going to be signing a contract extension with the Philadelphia 76ers. The one-time NBA MVP will sign a 3-year, $193 million maximum extension with the 76ers with a player option 2028-2029. Sources tell Shams this will become one of the 3 richest totals in NBA history. Love it. I think this should be something that was not shocking any longer. When we were talking maybe 6, 7, 8 months ago, I even had questions as to whether or not he was going to be staying in Philly long-term. Because when you were talking about Joel Embiid, we saw the results in the playoffs. There was rumors starting to grow. Was it going to be the New York Knicks? Was this an opportunity? Was this an option? So on and so forth. There was a lot of just questions going on. But what happened this offseason was the 76ers clearly said, hey, this is still your team. We're going to do whatever it takes to make this a championship roster. I alluded to this in the Philadelphia 76ers team preview. They are my favorites to win the championship as of this point in time, if healthy. And that obviously hinges on Joel Embiid. But he has a great team around him, the best team he's ever played with this upcoming season. And this is going to be a roster that sets him up for great success this year. So when I'm looking at this situation, I'm not shocked at all. I think it was a deal that was just bound to happen, just a matter of time. And when it was going to occur, it is now locked in. Joel Embiid is a part of the 76ers now for an extensive period of time until at least 2028, 2029 NBA season. And that's going to be exciting news for 76ers fans. There's no more trade rumors. We can throw those out the window for at least the next couple of seasons. He's a member of the 76ers for the foreseeable future. And I like that because, as I said, Sixers have a legit chance, if he is healthy, to win an NBA championship this year. And who knows? Could they win a couple? I'm never going to rule that out either because this team is very, very talented. And so that's going to be something to look forward to. That, my friends, is what I've got in store for you guys today on Hardwood Realities. Appreciate you guys all for tuning in to this part of the show. After this short break, I'm going to hop into Combat Currents, where I'll be unmasking Combat Currents of today's fight world. That will be coming up right after this break. But I appreciate all you guys for tuning in once again to this late night or the early morning show, depending on when you guys are listening. And I'll see you guys in a few short minutes. God bless you guys. I'll see you guys shortly. From the moment I was born, a ball was in my hands and a deep passion for sports was ignited. My dream was to play the game for as long as possible, but God had other plans. After battling with severe illnesses caused by black mold poisoning for nearly 4 years, I made the difficult decision to let go of my on-court dreams heading into my junior year of high school. However, I was determined to have one last victorious moment as an athlete, and that was achieved on February 9th, 2019, when I ran a marathon at the age of 16. That night, as I took a recovery Epsom salt bath, I felt God place on my heart the idea to start a podcast. Although I didn't know where to begin, the first episode of SchuZ Views dropped on March 11th, 2019. Over the next 1,183 days, more than 600,000 people tuned into 1,056 interviews. Then, on June 6, 2022, my final interview for over a year was released featuring Jameer Young. I never once thought that I'd be off the air for over a year, but the truth is there was something missing in me. At first, I thought creating a website would help fill that void, so I went and put together SchuZ.net, but nothing changed. Throughout the next month, I continued searching for answers, and eventually,
God worked in the only way that would have gotten my attention at that point in time, through something work-related. By the end of July 2022, my parents blessed me with the opportunity to build a studio. However, before breaking ground, the real change began. On August 3rd, 2022, my life changed forever. Once again, I happened to be taking a bath late into the night, and suddenly, an indescribable feeling came upon me. It was a profound urge to open up my Bible and read. I turned to 2 Corinthians chapter 4, and since that night, not a single day has passed without me spending time in the Word. You see, what was missing all along was Jesus. On August 6th, my dad and I began to lay the foundation for the next chapter of my career. Simultaneously, the foundation of who I was created to be was also being laid. Over the years, I had lost sight of my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I knew of God, but I didn't know Him, and I certainly was not following or living like Him. But day by day, the new me began to take shape. My former self's sole priority faded away, and I began to live out the acronym I often talked about, FJTFOE. It stands for First Jesus, then Family Over Everything. God became my everything, and He transformed me entirely. He helped me rediscover my love for family, running, lifting, playing basketball, giving back, the church, and most importantly, Him. This journey began with a craving to nourish my old identity, but God's hand was always in control, rapidly shaping my new identity. As God transformed me, He also grew my relationship with every member of my family. Together they stood by me and contributed to the person I am today. Through it all, Ephesians chapter 3 verse 20 manifested its truth in my life. The blessings I received far exceeded anything I could have imagined. The truth is that God's hand has always been there, but now I'm committed to following His path. Although I may look different, and my heart has undergone a profound change, I am truly blessed to announce the beginning of a new chapter. Starting July 24th, I will be launching my new show, the SchuZ Show, which will air on my YouTube channel every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I can't wait for you guys to join me in this next chapter. I'll see you guys soon, and may God bless you all.
There is a funny aspect about you, and that's the fact that I don't think you necessarily even tried to, but there's been countless times in your brief NBA career already that you've made it viral. You've made memes of yourself, whatever it might be. One of which was in the midst of that 40-point streak. You obviously broke LeBron's record, and you made your comment saying about, well, I'm not really a LeBron guy, I'm a Kobe guy. And I don't think you even intended that to go viral. Now you have that.
Nah, not at all.
There's your Steve Nash moment during the Summer League. We know that aspect. I think that was after the second year. You had a fine, obviously, at one point. You have your branding that you've now done. When you look at all these, like, do you ever intend to expect something to go viral or be funny, or does you just end up happening, and then by the time you get back on your phone, you're like, oh, this already just went down, dang.
Bro, that's crazy. No, not at all. No, because even with my brand, like when a random person asks me, because random people always see like, oh, he's so serious, and I'm just like, bro. And then I say it all the time. Like I say it no matter what. And I said it at one time and it blew up. And I was just like, I mean, I said it. I've been saying it every time. Like somebody asked me that. So that blew up. And then the Kobe thing, I was just being honest. I mean, it's no disrespect to LeBron. I love looking at LeBron playing stuff like that. You know, he's done a lot for the game and stuff. But it's just me being a fan of basketball. Me growing up with Kobe. Just my love for Kobe is like unmatched. So really that part. So really everything I say, I'm just like. I mean, I'm not really intending to go viral. I'm just speaking what's on my mind at that point. So, if it goes viral, it goes viral.
Which one of the things that's happened so far, maybe even one that I've not listed yet, was the most surprising to you? Like by the time you got on your phone, maybe even someone else came and told you about it, where you're like, dang, that really went viral?
The branding.
Staying consistent, I move with the clock. I'm in the zone, I'm not casting a stone. I'm finna stand on a rock, firm foundation. I got that dog in me, like 101 Dalmatian. I got God with me, so I know that I'm still finna make it. I'm still finna take it. I hopped in the ring and I'm still going crazy. I cut off this sin like I just got a taper. I walk in the storm and then God gave me favor. I'm still going forward. I just had to lock in the Lord. I knew that I'm finna make it. Throwing my old self, he got deported. Shout out to the king and I'm finna take it.
SchuZ Show. I'm your host, Zach, SchuZ Shoemaker. And I appreciate each and every single one of you guys that are tuning in, whether this be on your Tuesday, this be on your Wednesday, whatever the day may be, starting off your day, ending your day. I appreciate you guys all for listening and tuning in today. That being said, though, we have one final portion and part of this show to get into, and that's going to be Combat Currents, where I'll be unmasking combat currents of today's fight world. Now, this is going to be an interesting show to get into, part of the show to get into, because this weekend was an insane fight weekend, top to bottom. The fight weekend recap, it starts now. Let's get right to it, though. I'm going to go with the very first portion. It will be the Munguia Bazignan fight card. We had that on Friday night. That's what I wanted to address with you guys first. And so let's get right to it. Jaime Munguia, he's now become 44-1 after getting a KO in the 10th round against Eric Bazignan, who's now 32-1-1. Now, this was originally a 12-round bout. This was going to be a premier fight to really solidify who's going to be a contender to possibly get an opening belt for Canelo whenever he decides to let go of some belts, or possibly go for the one opening that they have available. Now, this was an interesting fight. Remember, this was the first fight for Munguia since his return this is the first fight since the Canelo Alvarez loss back in May. This was a very technical fight, and you could tell that there was a sense that Munguia was losing the early portion of the fight for the most part. Bazignan seemed to be in control at the start, but as the fight progressed, Munguia got better and better, and it got to the standpoint where in the 10th round, he unleashed on him, got the KO. He pretty much destroyed and beat him in real good there in the final 9-10 rounds there of the fight. Both guys did show great resilience, though. It was not an easy fight. A lot of hard hits. Both guys were taking big hits in that fight. Munguia was ultimately the one that prevailed in that showdown, though. That being said, though, both these guys that I alluded to were top guys in the 168 weight class. Both guys had the opportunity to really solidify themselves for another big-time fight. As I said, the Munguia was the one that prevailed. There was a list of guys I had presented and prepared for who I wanted to see Munguia fight next. But he's taking an interesting fight, though. He wants to stay active. He's going to fight December 14th in Tijuana, Mexico, and he's going to be fighting Ronald Gavril. Now, this is not a guy that's highly ranked. This is a guy that has caused problems for a lot of other guys in years recently. He's a guy that's underrated. He's a guy that's not going to be an easy fight. So it's a little bit surprising Munguia is taking this fight so shortly and instead of waiting out for a bigger fight. But Munguia is taking the challenge and will be fighting again this year, December 14th in Tijuana. What I do want to make clear, though, is that Munguia is a guy that I am very high on. We all have to realize and recognize that Canelo Alvarez is not going to be fighting forever. There's going to be a day when the king decides to move on and he decides to let go of some of his belts and he either moves on completely from boxing, goes to another weight class, whatever the case may be. When that day comes, we are seeing a lot of guys that are going to be the future of 168. Munguia is certainly solidified himself as a guy that a lot of people would probably say is a favorite to take over the reins there. He will be a champion once again one day. Edgar Berlanga is another guy that's in the mix there, as are other guys, but specifically I want to address Munguia right now. He is a guy that's entertaining to watch. He has a great fan base. He is extremely talented, resilient. He has a great ability. He's given, if you want to say, Canelo the biggest challenge, if you even want to say in the past couple of years, it would likely be Munguia. He did get a few wins or a few rounds, won against Canelo. Munguia is a guy that we're going to see around for a very, very long time. He's an incredible fighter, and he will be a world champion once again. Other people I want to address that was on that card, Richard Torres Jr. He fought Joey in what was essentially a fight that I thought was going to be an easy guarantee. Pretty much just give Richard Torres another fight. He moves to 11-0. He fought and got the DQ win on Joey, who decided that he could not keep his mouth guard in his mouth the entirety of the fight. It was annoying. He was getting beat up. It was going to be a KO anyways, but he just didn't want the KO against on his resume, so kept spitting out his mouthpiece. Very weird fight. Is what it is. Torres got the W, though. That's all that matters. He moved to 11-0, and he is only 25 years old. He is certainly one of the young prospects to keep an eye on at the heavyweight division. Then I want to discuss Emiliano Vargas. Moved to 12-0. He's only 20 years old. He just beat Larry Friars, and he KO'd him in round 5. He is another guy that, yes, people will say, well, he didn't fight anybody big. It's not a big name fighter. But guess what? Emiliano Vargas is a guy that we're going to see around for a very long time. He's a prospect for a reason. He's 20 years old. He's not going to be fighting the top guys yet. You're building yourself up, getting yourself ready to go take those next challenges, just as any other prospect is. And so for those that want to challenge whether or not he's good or not because it's early young process, it's pointless. He's 12-0. He's dominating in almost all of his wins. He's an incredible fighter, and he's certainly solidified himself as one of the premier young prospects in all of boxing. All right. That being said, that was Friday night. And as I said, it was a great transition because Friday night you had this card, And then just about 9 or 10 hours later, we were going to be able to get set for Riyadh season card, Wembley edition, and that's where the preview is going to be at now. Just to start off with how successful this event was, the Anthony Joshua vs. Daniel Dubois final attendance number was 98,128 at Wembley Stadium. New British boxing attendance record, biggest crowd the sport has ever seen in the country. On top of that, if I'm not mistaken, this also becomes a top 10 attended fight in boxing history. That is insane. And I'm going to just hint at this because I'm going to say this in a minute. I think if they were to do the rematch, you could get to 100. I'm just going to put that out there. What a successful event that was, though. Just from top to bottom, just to recognize and reflect on it real quickly, that event was sensational. The walkouts were insane, especially for the main event. Phenomenal. The card was successful. The fights were great. The fights were entertaining. There was not too many massive controversies. There were a couple little issues, but we'll address that. The fans, the atmosphere was sensational. The fights were great. Everything was so well put together. Just another successful Riyadh season card. That being said, let's address the main effects of the fight card is the fights themselves. So I want to get into that. I'm going to go from the first fight to the last fight, and that's how we're going to go in order of it, because I'm then going to transition into the heavyweight discussion following the AJ and Dubois breakdown. Let's get right to it now. The very first fight of the day, Mark Chamberlain, he fought Josh Padley, and this was one of the biggest upsets of the entire weekend. It was a massive upset where Josh Padley went in there as the extreme underdog. Chamberlain was a guy, as I said, was a fight or two away from a championship fight. He was a guy that has been rising up the rankings, solidified himself as a legitimate threat at the lightweight division. And Josh Padley comes and takes it away from him, moving Mark Chamberlain to 16-1 in his career. Josh Padley moves to 15-0, and he wins on points in that fight. Now, what I will say is this was not even a close fight. Josh Padley was in control the vast majority of that fight. And it was shocking. Mark Chamberlain was the favorite, as I said. Josh Padley was somewhat known, especially in the area, but he made his mark in that fight, solidified himself now as a player in the lightweight division. Massive game plan for Josh Padley, executed to perfection, and that was certainly an entertaining fight to watch this past weekend to kick off Riyadh season with one of the biggest upsets of the day. Next fight up was a big fight overall. It was Ishmael Davis. He had to fill in for Liam Smith, and he was fighting Josh Kelly. Ishmael Davis has now been moved to 13-1 after Josh Kelly defeated him. Josh Kelly moved to 16-1-1. This was a light middleweight fight. This was interesting from one standpoint. Josh Kelly seemed to be in control the entirety of the fight. I'm not really sure at what point in time the judges viewed Ishmael Davis as being in the fight. Sure, give him a couple rounds, especially that 12th round. He obviously busted up Josh Kelly real good there in that final round. But outside of that, there was not a lot of success for Ishmael Davis in this fight. He ended up losing, thankfully, but the scorecards were surprisingly close. A lot closer than I thought they were. Josh Kelly seemed to be in position. And this is one thing I understand where the judges come from. A lot of judges, if a guy is fighting on his back foot and the other guy is moving forward, they automatically think the guy pushing forward is the guy in control and winning the fight. But that's not the case. If you watch the fight and you don't have that just direct mindset, that's all you're looking for, you recognize that it was all part of the game plan. Josh Kelly was in control of the fight, but for whatever reason, the judges feel differently. So that's what we got there. Josh Kelly made a good statement, got a great win overall there, especially in a tough situation where you're expecting to fight a massive fight, the biggest fight of his life in Liam Smith, and you end up getting to a situation where a week before the fight occurs, less than that, 6 days before that, he gets replaced with Ishmael Davis, and so you had to go out there and fight, and you still had a great performance. So what do I see next for Josh Kelly? I see a big domestic fight. The Liam Smith fight could still be on the table. That would be an entertaining one to see. Chris Eubanks Jr., Conor Benn. I think all three of those fights are ones I'd like to see. Those three are all guys that's high up in the rankings. You can make a big domestic fight out there in the UK and Britain, and that would be an interesting fight to see there. I think he's earned a chance at one of those guys as well. Let's head up to the next fight on the card. And I know that actually I switched around, but I got my notes set for this. So we'll address Joshua Buatsi versus Willie Hutchinson. This was for the WBO interim light heavyweight title. And Joshua Buatsi, he won 19-0, or he's now moved up his record to 19-0, and Willie Hutchinson is now 18-2. This was an interesting fight as well. It was a fight that was potentially one that I saw as could have been the fight of the night prior to the fight. Ended up not being as good as maybe originally expected, but still a great fight nonetheless, because Joshua Buatsi went out there, and I thought he was in great control the entire fight. But one card happened to have Willie Hutchinson winning it. Now, Hutchinson had a decent moments, you could maybe say, but Buatsi was firmly the winner of that fight, and he was certainly in control for the vast majority, but without a doubt the winner. So to have one judge favoriting Hutchinson was shocking to me. That was one of the biggest things I'd say was very controversial about the day. But regardless of that, we saw just a great performance overall because Joshua Buatsi moves away from that as the WBO mandatory now for the Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol winner on October 12th. He had a great performance overall. Like I said, Willie Hutchinson built himself up. He got himself into a prime position to make a statement going forward. Willie Hutchinson has become a guy that a lot of people are fans of. I personally enjoy watching him. He's a great guy building up a fight. He's got an interesting style to watch. It was not his night. Joshua Buatsi was just better than him that night, and it is what it is. Buatsi, though, solidified himself as a legitimate threat in the light heavyweight division. He is the real deal. He proved himself once again, and that's why here's the list he's got. It's a very short list of guys that I'd like to see him fight next. The biggest one you have to have circled is fight for undisputed. Because when you have these guys that whoever's going to win the Bivol first better be a fight, October 12th, the biggest fight of the year, that one right there is somebody's going to have to fight them. There could be a rematch that occurs, potentially, who knows? You have Benavidez in the mix. You have Canelo could possibly go for it. If you have that chance for Buatsi, of course, you're going to go for undisputed. That's where I like to see him circle, and of course, it's going to be on his game plan number one. So I don't think he should make a game plan or idea for who to fight next until October 12th rolls around. Other options, if the undisputed is not on the table for himself, Anthony Yarde, David Morrell, or possibly, and I don't think this is one that I likely would see happen, but if Buatsi has a chance at Benavidez, that could be an entertaining fight. But mostly I'd say David Morrell, Anthony Yarde, both those guys would be guys that could possibly see him fight if undisputed is not on the table for him. Then for Willie Hutchinson, what's next for him? Well, as I said, he's still entertaining. Obviously, he got outclassed by Buatsi. Not really even a questionable statement there to make. But what's next for him? You could go Callum Smith, a guy that obviously has had a good career overall, but coming off a loss, is going to fight again, whatever the case may be. Would not mind seeing Callum Smith in that one. Dan Aziz, Lyndon Arthur, Malik Zanad. Remember, Malik Zanad had a great performance against Bivol. Overall, was surprising for what he's able to do on such short notice fight for his fight against Bivol on June 1st. That's another option. And then the one that I could see possibly, I'd say wait a little bit longer, maybe 6 months to 8 months, Ben Whitaker. The drunken master style fighter who's been up and coming. He's a guy that we're going to keep an eye on. He's fighting October 12th. That could be an interesting stylistic match. Willie Hutchinson is not quite fully in the drunken master style, but they have a lot of similarities that could result in an interesting fight. I think Willie Hutchinson would have the upper hand right now, which is why I say Ben Whitaker needs to fight well on October 12th. If Whitaker can also then go prevail and have another fight after that, then I could possibly see a matchup between Hutchinson and Whitaker at that point. But that's just one to keep an eye on because Whitaker is now ranked in the top 15 in a couple other different organizations. So that's what we got there for the Buatsi-Willie Hutchinson fight. Next up, I want to address Anthony Kakase. He beats Josh Warrington, and that was overall a solid fight. Technical fight, but a good fight overall. Kakase moves to 23-1, Warrington 31-4-1. Now, this was the fight that was a little bit of a problem from the standpoint that the IBF belt was supposed to be in the line. They pulled it from being on the line right before it happened. Bizarre situation there. Regardless if Kakase retains it, would have retained it either way. And he is still going to remain the IBF Super Featherweight World title holder. The one thing I do want to say right there is that Kakase obviously won it, a clear defeat there. He showed that he is legitimately a champion. He's a problem. But I want to emphasize this for Josh Warrington. Incredible overall career. He's given many, many great fights, been a part of big fights. And the final scene after that fight concluded, he left his gloves in the ring. For those that follow boxing are well aware that that means typically that that's going to be a retirement for that fighter. And if that is to be the case, then obviously congratulations on the incredible career to him. He had a great run, lots of great moments, but we'll see if he comes back or not. Obviously, he hasn't officially announced anything since that point in time. But I do want to say, since that's his future's kind of been already decided, if that is the case, he's going to retire, I'm only going to say what's next for Anthony Kakase. There's really only two options. One specifically I want to address for what Kakase should do. Lamont Roach. Unify the belts right there for super featherweight. That's got to be number one on his plan. Then you could go also to Eduardo Nunez. That could be a big fight as well. Because of the fact that he is a highly ranked guy, number one challenger, that would be something to keep an eye on as well. Those are really the only two guys. If you want to name somebody else, you could say Lee Wood is in the mix. Not as high about that. I really think his eyes should just be set on Lamont Roach. Eduardo Nunez. That's what I would circle for him. So we'll see what ends up unfolding with those guys. Last two, co-main event. Let's get right into it now. Hamza Shiraz, Tyler Denny. That was a beatdown. The one I'm going to talk about, the main event, that was a beatdown too, but we're talking about getting a guy out of there in round 2. He got him down in literally 10 seconds or whatever it was. That 7 seconds, he already knocked him down. It was literally demolition job from start to finish by Hamza Shiraz. He was a 21-0. Tyler Denny's 19-3 and 3 now in his career, and he now gets the European middleweight title. That was just, like I said, an absolute destruction job by Hamza Shiraz, and it wasn't what I was surprised to see at all. That's why I talked about on the preview. Hamza Shiraz is a guy that I view as a guy that will be a champion one day. He is a very, very good fighter, and when you look at what happened in that fight, Tyler Denny has had a good run. He's put in position to be ranked again. He is a solid fighter, but there is levels to this thing, and there was a massive gap there. Denny was going to be a massive underdog, and it showed there. So Shiraz, now he wins the European middleweight title, and all I'm going to say is this. He deserves a championship fight. Hamza Shiraz is a guy that's going to be a champion in the future. I don't know if that's going to be this year or next year. He deserves a championship fight. He is going to be able to attain that, and I think he will be champion one day. He is a tough guy to fight. His length, his size, his talent, his power, how he's able to get all that down into his weight class of middleweight is sensational to me, is remarkable. He is going to be a guy to keep an eye on because he will be a champion in the future. Tyler Denny obviously had a great showing as well, but going forward, Hamza Shiraz is going to be a problem. He made that very, very clear. So what's next for Hamza Shiraz? Well, Janabek, that's an option on the table. Carlos Adames, that's an option on the table. Orius Landy, Laura, that's an option on the table. Those are the only 3 guys I consider if I'm Hamza Shiraz, the 3 champions right now that are available to fight. All 3 of those guys are guys that I think he has a chance at potentially defeating and dethroning and taking the belt from them. And those are 3 fights I'd like to see as well. So if I'm Hamza Shiraz, you already obviously have great ties with His Excellency. Make one of those fights happen. Go get them belts, and you start your great reign as a champion at the middleweight division. Now, let's get to the main event. Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois. That was one heck of a fight. And I've got a lot to say on this. It's going to be a little bit of a lengthy portion to this portion because there's a lot to reflect on and dissect from this fight. When we headed into this fight, Daniel Dubois was the underdog, significant underdog, might I say, to Anthony Joshua. However, everybody that knows and studied and prepared for this fight knew that this fight was not going to go the distance. I would have been shocked if it was going to even reach the second half of the rounds. AJ has been on an absolute tear of KOing guys. Daniel Dubois has been beating guys down and KOing them as well. This was not going to go the distance, regardless of how you looked at it. And when we got to this fight, that's exactly how it went down. Not who was expected to win, but the ultimate outcome is how it went down. And I wanted to say a lot of this because just to reflect on the fight to begin with, Dubois walks out, gets AJ rattled right at the gate, and from that point on, AJ is essentially damaged goods. He wasn't going to be recovered that well. He gets knocked down a couple more times, but what was interesting to me was that in round 5, he seemed to, I don't want to say recover because it wasn't as if he was good as new, but he seemed to have his feet settled a little bit better. He seemed to have a little bit grasp of where he was at, and he seemed to be getting going a little bit to the extent that he even hurt Dubois. Dubois was rattled. And the thing is that AJ wasn't fully back to himself where he was still working on defense, and he obviously went for a certain move, and then Dubois countered, and he ultimately laid the ending dent on AJ. That ends up being what occurs to end this fight and get Dubois the IBF officially submitted, fighting himself as the IBF heavyweight champion of the world. But there's a few points I want to state here, because all respect to Daniel Dubois. In no way am I going to take anything away from him because he had an absolute domination job on AJ. What I'm going to say right now, though, in regards to this fight, is the switch-up mentality that a lot of boxing fans do tend to have when we talk about fighting. I just said that before the fight, AJ was the favorite. If you look on Twitter for the most part, and the way people are talking, it's as if people are saying AJ hasn't been good since his Ruiz fight or since his last losses. Sure, has he been exactly the same? I don't know, but we were all in a full agreement that AJ was the favorite for that fight. Now, I won't say full, but majority was in agreement that AJ was the favorite for that fight. most would have said that AJ looks great, and AJ has just had an incredible 18-month run. So the fact that people are out here now saying that AJ is damaged goods, that AJ was not himself, that AJ is not good anymore, that AJ was washed, and that fight hasn't been the same in many, many years, that's complete ludicrousy. That is not accurate at all, and that's a false statement. That's a stigma that's been going around boxing that I do not like at all. When we started having this idea that everyone's only as good as their last fight, and all of a sudden everything that's been done prior to that is irrelevant, is nonsense. AJ did not have a trash run to get to this point. He was in position to get a belt and a world championship again because of what he just done. So we can't take that away from him, because ultimately all that's being done when we say that is that we're taking away from Dubois and what he just accomplished. AJ was AJ. He was perceived as either number 2 or 3 ranked heavyweight in the world, and he was fighting Dubois, who was an underdog. Do not take away anything from Dubois in this victory by saying AJ was washed or anything along those lines, because what AJ was he was a great fighter, and he was in great position there, and he worked his way to get back into that place. And Dubois manhandled him in that fight. So all people are doing when they talk about this wash and all these different situations, you're only taking away from Dubois, and it's ultimately an inaccurate statement, because that's not what you were likely saying 4 or 5 days ago if we're talking last week. So that's just a stigma I wanted to make sure I clear up about this real quickly, because that's irritating to see and an inaccurate statement as well. The only thing I will say is that if you're looking at this and saying, okay, from a health standpoint, AJ just took a beating. Getting dropped supposedly 4 or 6 times, we don't know, just happening so rapidly, and then getting knocked out the way he did, that is going to do damage for anybody. That's one of the situations when we talk about the fact that boxing is not a sport. It's you don't play boxing, you do boxing. That's the definition of it, because boxing can take years off your life. It's proven. We know that. That's a situation, unfortunately. That's likely the results of what occurs in those scenarios. So if you're looking at this from a standpoint of saying age is older now, he's 34 years old, and he's already taken a couple beatings in his life. He's a physical fighter, and then this just occurred to him. If you're looking at saying, okay, he needs to retire because of what just happened to him, okay, that's different. I can agree with that. I see where you're coming from that standpoint. Sure. But if any other aspect you're talking about in regards to him being washed beforehand is inaccurate, and that's ridiculous. Because like I said, it's not only is it just inaccurate, not true about AJ, you're taking stuff away from Dubois. That being said, let's talk about Daniel Dubois. Because what Daniel Dubois just did is he just took out what was perceived as a number 2, number 3 ranked fighter in the world. I have a number 2 prior to the fight. Daniel Dubois, he is a fighter at 27 years old who is already a world champion at the heavyweight division. He has already fought on his resume Alexander Usyk, Anthony Joshua, Philip Hrgovic, Joe Joyce, Kevin Lorana, and Jarrell Miller. That's an incredible resume for a 27-year-old. At the heavyweight division, when typically your prime doesn't start necessarily until maybe 30 or so. Now, that could be different and whatnot. But Daniel Dubois solidified himself as the future of the heavyweight division this past weekend. He made a statement. As a massive underdog, he walked into Wembley singing as if that was his home. He had no problem whatsoever, was not shadowed, or not shaken, was not rattled to any degree. And he walked out there and made a statement in front of 98,000 people in Wembley. And he made himself solidified as a champion now, but a guy that should be a champion for a very, very long time. He is 27 years old, folks. And he just did what he did to Anthony Joshua. He's got a long time to reign. He's going to be a problem for a very, very long time. He has got lots of fights to possibly make. He's got a chance at undisputed. And like I said, 27 years old. He could be on a 10-year run potentially. That's not even out of the question when you talk about what he's capable of. He's still getting better and better as we talk. He is going to be a problem for a very, very long time, and he's going to be a guy that's going to be a threat in the heavyweight division for the next potentially decade. That is what we saw and learned about Daniel Dubois this weekend, and nobody can take anything away from him because that guy was all business. He made a mark on heavyweight both now and in history overall. That being said, I will say this. A couple other aspects before I get into this, because like I said, I'm going to transition this into the heavyweight division in a moment, but I want to make sure that we take a couple of different aspects to look at this, because this fight was incredible. Anybody that looks at this would say, okay, that's what you want in a heavyweight fight. Both guys came out swinging. Daniel Dubois legitimately jumped the gun right at the gate. There was no waiting around to test his power. There's no waiting around to take a couple of shots. Defense was very, very limited too, surprisingly by AJ. That's the one thing I will say. I was shocked by the limited amount of defense from AJ. We have gotten to know AJ as a guy that is one of the top, most powerful fighters in the heavyweight division, but also one of the most skilled guys in the heavyweight division. And the skills seem to really be limited in that fight. when you rewatch that and you see some of the hits that Dubois was hitting AJ with, they were maneuvers that AJ typically would not get hit with. And so it was shocking to see the lack thereof defense from AJ, but that's really the only component that I'd say really was interesting. And so why I also would say that I am intrigued in a potential rematch there to see if AJ could like kind of switch up on some of those things and fix his weaknesses in that fight. But that fight was incredible from start to finish. Guys were swinging. AJ got dropped multiple times. Dubois got rocked. That was a heavyweight fight, a classic heavyweight fight that people will talk about for a very, very long time. The last thing I want to address about this fight is this. We need to give respect to AJ on his career. There's a lot of times that when we look at guys, you might have been a fan of him, you might not have been a fan of him, but when greatness is present, you have to show respect. AJ has become not just an icon in Britain and the UK, he's become a worldwide icon. One that you could easily say has been the face of boxing now. And you could look at that by numbers. The face of boxing does not always mean you are the best boxer. It means that you are recognized around the world. You're a global icon. When people think of boxing, people, regardless of whether you follow boxing or not, think of you. You are the definition of pay-per-view. And let's look at these numbers now. After this weekend, just alone in the stadium fights in which AJ has been a part of, he has now sold 490,000 stadium tickets. That number is insane. Almost 500,000 stadium tickets have been sold by Anthony Joshua throughout his career. He has set the record now this weekend of 98,000 plus in attendance. He has sold out Wembley Stadium. He sold out anywhere you place him at, he sells out. That is what Anthony Joshua has brought to the table in terms of his audience. But then we do that, but then we look deeper into that, and it's not just about the audience that you evaluate, because what Anthony Joshua also does is he's got that audience because of what he's built as a fighter. Anthony Joshua has had an incredible run. He's been a champion twice. He's been a guy that's been able to accomplish tremendous success in his career, and he's one of the great stories in boxing. He talks about it all the time. This was not supposed to be his life. Anthony Joshua was not supposed to go out and be a great boxer. He was in trouble with the law. He was getting arrested when he was only 20 years old. He didn't start boxing until he was 20. And he's now gone on to become one of the greatest icons of this generation in boxing, period. He's become the guy that has revolutionized British boxing. He's become one of the most successful fighters there's ever been, all since starting at the age of 20. He's also carried himself at an extremely high level and been a reflection of a great role model. That is the guy that people should be able to respect. And so he's already announced he's not going to retire. So we're going to see AJ again in the ring at some point. But I think we need to make sure we show respect and understand just what he's brought to boxing and how much he's revolutionized boxing as a whole. So that's what I've got for you guys in regards to a recap of this past weekend's fight cards. That being said, I do want to transition this because I did not say who I thought Daniel Dubois and AJ should fight next, because I got a special segment coming up next. Or actually, before we do that, let me actually cut that back real quick. I do want to say one other thing about Riyadh season card. I have my big winners for you guys from the Riyadh season cards this past weekend. From both the Munguia and Bazignan fight card and the Riyadh season card Wembley edition. Here's my 5 biggest winners of the weekend. At number 5, Hamza Shiraz. Wasn't the most talented fighter he fought, but he made a statement. Second round KO, made his mark, solidified himself as a future champion, in my opinion. I have number 5 biggest statements made this weekend. Number 4, Joshua Buatsi. He came in with a statement made as well, getting the win on Willie Hutchinson. Didn't get the KO, but showed his dominance and solidified himself as one of the top contenders in the light heavyweight division. At number 3, Josh Padley was the biggest upset. Maybe I'd say the biggest upset of the weekend. He goes in as a guy that nobody thought had a chance at winning, and he dethrones Mark Chamberlain, a guy that was a potential future champion, and he makes a massive statement in that win. At number 2, Jaime Munguia gets a 10th round KO on Eric Bazignan, who was also a fellow top 10 ranked fighter, and he solidified himself as a guy that's going to be a contender, and in my opinion, a future champion once again at 168. And the biggest winner of the weekend is Daniel Dubois. Not much question there. You could easily say he was the biggest upset of the weekend in his defeat of Anthony Joshua. He got himself an IBF heavyweight championship of the world. He is a guy that is at 27 years old and made one of the biggest statements you could ask for this weekend. He solidified himself as both a current champion, but a champion for many years to come. So that is my top 5 winners of this past weekend's fights. Now, let's transition to what I said. So as I was saying, I did not give you guys a potential next fight list for both AJ or Dubois. That's because I have a segment planned for you guys here now that I want to break down the state of the heavyweight division. Because this heavyweight division in boxing has long been a division where people have been frustrated with it. People have looked at the heavyweight division and wondered, well, why can't we get these big fights? We could have had one of the biggest fights of a decade in Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua. That never went down. There were so many different fights we could have made in the heavyweight division, but nothing would happen. But today, we're in a position where the heavyweight division is probably in the best position it has been in many, many years. Both from a mindset of looking at it from a talent perspective, but also from stuff is going down and happening. And a large thanks to that can obviously be given to His Excellency in Turkey. So let's break down the heavyweight division and where it stands today and why it is in such a great position. The number one ranked fighter in the heavyweight division is Alexander Usyk. Everything revolves around him. He's the was undisputed champion of the world. He's in line right now to be able to possibly go fight for undisputed again, most likely against Daniel Dubois. Everything revolves around him, though, on December 21st in his fight against Tyson Fury in the rematch of the undisputed fight. The winner of that will obviously then go forth and fight Daniel Dubois, most likely. Usyk, like I said, everything runs around him. He is an incredible champion. His resume only gets better because of obviously the aspect that he already defeated Daniel Dubois just last year. Questionable victory, which is why the rematch would be very interesting to see there. But Usyk is the number one lead dog. His only thing that's got to be on his mind right now is Fury, undisputed again. If he loses, we'll reevaluate what goes down there. Number two fighter now is Tyson Fury again. He is the winner of, if he potentially goes and gets the win against Usyk on December 21st, he then will obviously go for undisputed against Daniel Dubois. Will be a massive British fight again. Crazy to think once again, Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, Daniel Dubois, all from Britain. Incredible possible fight there to see, just for the UK perspective. If he loses, though, here's where things get interesting as well. You have a chance to have an option where you go fight have the AJ and Tyson Fury fight. The fight that I've discussed just a couple weeks ago, the fight that people in the UK have looked forward to for so many years now. And that is another massive potential fight to see have happen. So Fury has two options really that we want to see. You either go, and after the Usyk fight, you go fight Daniel Dubois for undisputed. If you lose, you go and fight Anthony Joshua in what would be a huge fight. You could easily do at Wembley once again. It would probably hit 100,000 people. That's an option you could do as well. After that, you head to number three, essentially, I want to discuss Daniel Dubois. Everything on his mind right now should be undisputed. You have yourself set to be a potential 27-year-old undisputed champion of the world next year. That's what you have to have your eyes set on. You either get a rematch and avenge your loss to Alexander Usyk, or you can go fight Tyson Fury and basically have yourself be proclaimed as the king of the UK. And that would be a huge statement to make as well. Both would be insane fights, and you become undisputed. However, there are a couple of options you could look at for him. He is on the opportunity now to possibly go and stay active. I know that's what Frank Warren discussed a little bit. I know that's what some people have said and suggested, that he could want to desire to stay active. If Daniel Dubois wants to stay active, you have a few options on the table. One, rematch Anthony Joshua. This does sound like a possible option on the table right now. And personally, I'm intrigued in that. I see where a lot of people don't want to see it, but I alluded to the aspect that AJ made a lot of obvious mistakes. If he's able to recover from the injuries and the damage he took, it could be a fight where, like we said, we saw him, he was already damaged goods, and he rattled Dubois. He hurt him pretty bad until he got countered and obviously got KO'd. That's not a fight that I'm going to rule out completely, and I would not be against seeing a rematch there. So that could happen. Obviously, it's another fight where you could easily push 100,000 people to go at Wembley and watch that fight, but it's also ultimately another big payday for Daniel Dubois as well, and to solidify himself and to stay active. That could be an option. If AJ is not on the table, and this one is an interesting one as well, I wouldn't be opposed to Joseph Parker. That would be an interesting fight to make. Now, as I alluded to, though, you have to kind of balance these aspects where if you know Undisputed is going to be able to happen in second quarter of next year, that's something that's hard to pass up on. I would not really recommend passing up on that either. So therefore, fighting a guy like Joseph Parker, where it's not going to be a big money fight most likely, it's just staying active against a very, very, very good fighter that could possibly take your belt, isn't really the best option for you if you want to go for Undisputed and cement yourself, because at that point, you could then go and fight Joseph Parker. So I'm not 100% set on that. I think if I'm him, you're going for Undisputed, and you're going to go for the opportunity to go and fight AJ in a rematch. Let's go talk about Anthony Joshua now. There was a lot of things on the table for AJ as well. One option for AJ was retire. That's what a lot of people were saying right after the fight. That's not going to happen, though. He already released a video, and he's not going to be retiring, so we can mark that off the table. What do we look at then? Well, personally, should he take a break? I would be in favor of that. 9 months or so would not be shocking to me, maybe even a year. That was a serious damage that he took that fight. I wouldn't recommend getting right back into it, but ultimately it's his decision. It depends on what happened with Daniel Dubois. I alluded to just the fact a second ago the rematch could happen. Here's the exact statements that from Daniel Dubois declaring that he wants and would welcome, he would welcome a rematch with Anthony Joshua next. I want to do even better next time. I know what I need to improve on. I just want to prove people wrong all the time. Next time, I believe I'll be more clinical. Dubois, no rematch clause. AJ did have a rematch clause. That's been revealed now from Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn. And so the one I do want to say as a side note there, the AJ rematch clause is not directly a rematch clause with Dubois. It's more so a rematch clause under a Saudi contract, the Riyadh season contract. So it essentially would mean he gets another Riyadh season card fight. Not sure if that's going to translate to a Dubois and AJ fight or what it's going to be like, but that's just what the contractual law appears to be. Frank Warren has also gone on to say that he's open to a rematch. That leads for a possible option for AJ. What are you going to look at for him? The rematch with Dubois, if that's option for you, I would take it. If you are fighting, he said he's going to continue fighting, you don't want to go back down and have to work your way back up. If you have an opportunity to go get it back right now, might as well go do it. And so that's a fight that would be interesting. Now, Dubois saying he can improve on things, yeah, he can. Obviously, you talk about the clinical component to it. He did get rocked. He did get hurt there in the later parts of that fight. If he can go and improve on that, AJ could be in serious trouble. But also, there's a lot of room for AJ to improve. And if anybody has a lot more room to improve, it's certainly AJ. Like I said, the defense was off that night. So that's obviously an opportunity for AJ. That's the number one thing I'd consider if I'm Anthony Joshua. Next up, I've got on the list for him is ultimately for AJ, he needs to make sure he waits until December 21st. If the fight with Dubois can't be made right now, and that's not what he's going to pursue, then I would wait for until December 21st to decide what's going to happen. Because if you're not getting the rematch with Dubois is holding out for undisputed, go out there and pursue Tyson Fury. That would be a huge fight. You can make a big money fight, a big British fight. You would have a massive audience out there potentially at Wembley Stadium, and that would be huge. Fury loses, AJ just lost. Those two guys go and make the fight that people wanted to see for so many years. That's an option right there. The other one, I don't think this is the fight yet. When you have His Excellency's money involved, it could happen. I would say that I would wait on this, but you do have the option now. If any time was better in recent years, it's now for the AJ and Wilder fight to happen. The fight we've all been waiting for so many years could happen. Not even close to what we once wanted it to be, but it could happen. I don't think it's going to be likely because personally, AJ just had one loss to a guy that's now champion. Wilder's been beat down by Zhang, and he's also gone forth and lost to Joseph Parker in an abysmal, just horrible display back on December 23rd. And so if I'm Wilder, I want to fight before I get into that one because I think he could get pieced up real badly. If I'm Wilder, I think you should go fight at least one more time before and get a win. So that's what I think that could happen. But obviously it's on the table. You never know what's going to occur there. So other guys I could see, let's say you don't wait out for Fury. Let's say the Dubois fight doesn't come to fruition and Wilder just doesn't make sense. I don't think it does. You then look at a list of rebuilding yourself up again. Hrgovic, Frank Sanchez, those guys I could see just to go possibly get another win, a notable win, but another win on your resume and start building yourself back up again. Let's head over to Joseph Parker. Just to talk about him a few moments ago. Joseph Parker is in an interesting situation. He made such a big statement in back-to-back fights in the past 365 days, and he's really just been sitting around in this top 5 spot. Everybody knows he's good, but just the heavyweight division has been so wrapped up recently that who does he fight? You have the undisputed fight. He wasn't going to be able to get into that one. AJ's been working his way up, and he got the belt fight against Daniel Dubois. So it's just been this weird situation for Joseph Parker, who we all know is one of the premier boxers at the heavyweight division. So what do I look at for him? Well, unfortunately, there's not another great big fight, like a championship fight that he can go get yet. So I'm looking at a big fight like this. Caballero. That's the one I would like to see him fight. That one makes a lot of sense. You could also go look at Zhang. That's another fight you could rematch against him. There was a rematch clause in that fight. Joseph Parker beat Zhang. If they decide to go execute that rematch, you could make that one. Also, you could have a possible Daniel Dubois fight, as I alluded to. That would be the one that would be huge for him. If he can get that one, obviously you're taking that in a heartbeat. But that's something to keep an eye on right there. The most likely one, like I said, is Caballero because the main reason that I don't want the Zhang fight to happen yet is you have a massive fight that I believe has to happen in the heavyweight division, which is what I'm going to talk about right now. Marcin Bakole. He made a massive statement in Riyadh season, Los Angeles, against Jared Anderson. He has solidified himself now as one of the premier heavyweights as well. And having the option to fight Zhang has to happen. There's not any other debate. This is one of the biggest fights you can make and most entertaining fights you can make from the standpoint of having the two biggest heavyweights in the world fight each other. These are both massive Goliath-type guys that you have an opportunity to go fight and make a massive fight there. I want that one to happen. If you can get those two guys to happen, whether that be in Africa or China, has been rumored by His Excellency, that's the number one option. I don't really want to hear anybody else potentially fighting either one of these two guys. That just has to happen. Both guys are coming off big wins. Both guys are the two biggest guys in the heavyweight division. Both guys are heavy hitters that take a lot to knock them down. That is what I want to see have occur. That's what you have to have happen. So if Martin Bakole doesn't fight Zhang, then the only other guy I said would make possible sense at this point in time, go avenge your loss to Michael Hunter. That could be on the table as well. Then let's go ahead over to Zhang and discuss his possible options. As I said, don't want anything else except for Bakole. Go after that fight that needs to happen. And if not that, then you obviously could exercise your clause to go and fight a rematch against Joseph Parker. Would be interesting. Joseph Parker had the easy win against Zhang just back earlier this year. Would not be against seeing that fight at all. So that could occur. Would also be big. That would be a big win either way for Zhang. But both of those two fights are ones I do like to see for Zhilei Zhang. Filip Hrgović. Let me make this statement about him. I don't like people that go and rate people based upon how their last fight was. But when you don't have a lot of sustained evidence behind a fighter, as Hrgović didn't have, except for the Zhang win, there was a lot of uncertainty regarding him when he got pieced up real bad by Daniel Dubois. But this past weekend, based upon what we witnessed Daniel Dubois do to Anthony Joshua, I think a lot more respect has to be given to Hrgović because he lasted longer than AJ lasted, and he ultimately didn't look as bad now you look back in hindsight and recognize what he was dealing with in Daniel Dubois. So Hrgović is back firmly on the centerpiece now to look at the heavyweight division. And as I alluded to, he overall has had a great run throughout his career, but hasn't had performed at a great level on the high stages yet. There's been some good performances. Obviously, you look at Zhilei Zhang, he had the win right there. But he's only really performed on a high level in a big high-stakes situation twice. So you have to keep an eye on for that one as well now, because he was a big winner, I should say, of this past weekend, seeing what we obviously witnessed occur to Anthony Joshua by Daniel Dubois. So what do I see for Hrgović then? He still does have to go get a win underneath his belt. Again, that's going to need to happen because when you talk about having the destruction he just took on from Daniel Dubois, he's going to go need to get another win or two to get himself back up to the high-ranking groups in the heavyweight division. Who do I look at then? Otto Vollin's the guy on the table. Frank Sanchez, Efe Ajagba. You could look at Caballel if that's an opportunity. That'd be a big one. Or Justice Haney. All those options of people you could see as interesting fights that you could easily see placed on a Riyadh season card as, number 3 or 4 fight of the day. And that would be a big one just to get himself going again. Then they're going to go into Ajet Caballel. The guys I already discussed. Number 1, Joseph Parker. That's the fight I like to see there happen. If not, I'd like to see Ajagba. That would be an interesting fight. A lot of people aren't very well aware of Efe Ajagba yet. He's up and coming. Lots and lots of power. Would like to see that fight potentially occur as well. Then we're going to go to number 10. Not that I ranked Deontay Wilder at number 10, but he's a big name. I have to discuss him because there's a lot on the table now that he's become essentially, to some certain limited extent, an option on the table for him to fight Anthony Joshua now. But here's what I'm going to say. I discussed this 2 weeks ago when I said that Deontay Wilder has a few options he's going to have to decide upon in his career if he's going to actually want to take this seriously again. He can't have Malik Scott as his trainer anymore. But either way, it appears he's going to have Malik Scott still. And he said this just about a couple of days ago. Malik Scott said that there's not going to be a retirement involved with Deontay Wilder. Interesting to me because, well, what are we going to have happen next then? Is he just going to go on another long break? Whatever the case may be. But the point is Deontay Wilder is still a player to some extent now. So let's get into it. What I think he needs to do, first and foremost, is go get an easy win. If it's early next year, first, second quarter of next year, go make that happen. Go get yourself an easy win. See what's available possibly. If AJ is available and you can make a last hurrah type of fight, go ahead and I guess do that if you really want to. But if you really want to take this seriously, I said, I'm not going to go through it all again. You have options on the table. You have to truly decide if you want to do this anymore. If you want to do it at the heavyweight division, if you want to get rid of your trainer, whatever the case may be, changes has to happen if he wants to go out there and compete again and be a legitimate player at the heavyweight division. I don't think his power is gone yet. Power does not leave you until you're later on in life in your 50s or whatever the case may be. His power is still there. It's a matter of his heart still in it. And so if he wants to get back, he's going to have to go fight a guy lower ranked, get that win again, and move from there. All right, that's what I got for 10 notable names in the heavyweight division. But the cool thing about the heavyweight division is it's not over yet, because there's also the future guys I want to talk about. There's a few guys, and one of these guys I would easily put in the top 10, Mosi Toma. I've talked about him before, extremely high on him. I think he's a future champion, 19 years old, having destructive, dominant wins so far in his career. He's one of the premier, in my opinion, the best under 25 heavyweight fighter in the world right now. You also have Jared Anderson. He's going to be just fine. 24 years old, took a beating by Martin Bakoli, will be out for a little while. However, I think he's going to bounce back, still extremely talented. Justice Haney and Richard Torres Jr., other guys that are young athletes in the heavyweight division, up and coming, both at 25 years old. Those are guys to keep an eye on that are going to be factors in the heavyweight division for the foreseeable future. Let's head over now to other notable names that I did not list, but are more experienced veterans that I think you could see. They're guys that fight the guys I've already talked about, fight the young up-and-coming guys, or could fight each other and possibly work their way up to be back in that top-level groups. F.A. Ajagba, a guy I'm very high on, mentioned his name a few different times. Frank Sanchez, Fabio Wardley, Otto Wallin, Andy Ruiz, Luis Ortiz, Derek Chisora, Jarrell Miller. All of these guys are guys that have talent, are top 15 ranked guys on multiple different organizations or sanctioning bodies and organizations, guys that could easily make themselves relevant again in the heavyweight division by fighting one of these young up-and-coming guys, or maybe when young up-and-coming guys defeat one of them, or going up there and possibly challenging one of the guys I already discussed. So lots of big names on the heavyweight scale, but as I alluded to, the heavyweight division is loaded right now. From top to bottom, the heavyweight division is a division that is probably in the best situation it's been in a very long time. You have so many great fighters. You have great experienced veteran guys that are all-time greats. You have guys that are up and coming, great young guys, lots of just depth in the division overall, and fights are being made. This is a great time to be alive with a heavyweight division and lots of fights to make. Couple more things before I wrap up this show, so let's get right into it now. Conor McGregor have a plea now to fight date. He's now had a plea to fight date. He really wants to fight. We've known this now for a while. It's been a little dispute going back and forth between Dana White and himself. Something that, quite frankly, we don't have all the details on, but I do want to make sure that I pull this up for everybody right now, because there's been a lot of discussions going on right now. I guess the tweet's been taken down now, so I'm not going to be able to pull that one up. So I'll just read you guys what was said, basically. When we go through the Conor McGregor situation, he was drug tested again by the UFC drug testing group, and he talked about on Twitter, not very happy about it, discussing how he's the most drug-tested fighter in the UFC, even though he hasn't fought in a long time, but yet he can't seem to get himself a date to fight yet. Not a good situation if you are Conor McGregor. And there's a few things I want to discuss about this aspect, because Conor McGregor is a great fighter, all-time great in the UFC. Does he want to fight all these different things? We don't know. We saw him at the fight this past weekend out there in the Wembley Stadium, and he said he's going to fight 2025 most likely now. So 2024 is likely off the table 100% now. But if you're Conor McGregor and Dana White, here's likely what the debate's looking like right now. On one side, does he still have to be 100%? McGregor said he's not going to fight again until he's at 100%. We've all said that's not going to happen for a fighter. So is he still looking to somehow have the miraculous 100% fight? If not, then great. If he does, then that's going to be tough to really lock in him headlining an event again. Then you have to look at the other aspect. Dana White, I know there's been rumors before as well. The UFC TV deal is going to be renewed in the near future. They're going to go into negotiations. And that's something you have to keep an eye on, because if the negotiation prospect is there, Dana White might be hesitant to let Conor McGregor fight right now because of the aspect of saying, hey, we still have 2 McGregor fights on our contract. You're going to want to be a part of those. Only one or having none could hinder that amount of money given over in that deal. So that's something to keep an eye on as well. Also, you have to look at is the reliability of him. Can you trust McGregor? Does he even really want this anymore? It's confusing for a lot of people. We all know that money can change you. We all know that money has the ability to alter the way you perceive things, especially when you're talking about being however much money his net worth is, millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, and you're at a perspective in life now where do you really want to wake up and go get punched in the face and fight? That's hard to fathom or understand. And so when you talk about the reliability of him, is he going to pull out again? Because when you are the UFC, you build an entire card around him. It takes so much that they have to go put an entire card, make it be in Las Vegas, get everything set up and situated for him, have him headline it. The promotion's incredible. All these things have to go and be done to make a Conor McGregor fight happen. If you can't trust in him, that's going to be a hard commitment for the UFC to make. At the same time, though, he is still the biggest brand in the UFC, and it will be worth it if they can figure it out. So what I have to say about this is, listen, the McGregor fight, we all want to see him happen. We all want to see that happen eventually. We would love to see McGregor have another shot at fighting. We want to see him back again. But is he going to fight? We don't know. Will it be 2025? Who knows? That's what we have right now. He's obviously not happy. He's in a little bit of a beef, if you want to call it, with Dana White. And we'll see how that continues to unfold in the future. Let's head over now to the final thing I want to discuss with the show today. And it was a little bit of a Twitter discussions going on. And for those that know me, I always will keep it clean. I'm not going to go into explicits. I'll just skip over those words and I'm going to hint at them. You guys can go research whatever the tweets were. If you guys know what it is, good for you. But Devin Haney, Sean O'Malley, they are going back and forth in what could potentially be a fight with each other. And ultimately, I think it's ridiculous. But let me just break this all down, and then I'll give my exact thoughts on this. This is how it happened. Haney tweeted out at Sean O'Malley saying he essentially lost in the fight, which was accurate. And Sean O'Malley then went on his podcast and said that he's willing to put up $1 million to fight Devin Haney from his own money. And this was obviously removing explicits from the quote tweet there, from the statement. He said, if Devin Haney really wants to fight, I'll put $1 million on me versus him. No time limit, and we can fight. MMA rules or just a fight with no rules. You can eye poke me if you want. If you want to talk on Twitter, we can really, really actually fight. All right, that's what Sean O'Malley says. Good to know. Then we head over, though, and Haney responds and says, I don't fight for $1 million like you. Sean O'Malley, let's do a boxing fight and give us a shot at making real money. Obviously, that's a shot at the aspect that you make a lot more money in boxing than you do in MMA. And Devin Haney does make significantly more money than just $1 million to do a fight, let alone an MMA fight. Therefore, we then have Sean O'Malley respond to that one, and he says, let's just fight for fun then. I don't need money to fight you. You suck. All right. Is this going to happen? I highly doubt it. I don't think Dana White's going to let him out of his contract to go do this fight unless this is a serious decision, and it appeared so today that Dana White is very, very serious in boxing, and to the extent that he's actually already building headquarters at the Apex for boxing. He's going to go all in on 2025. A lot more details on that got released tonight, so we'll see what unfolds there. So if that is the only outlet I could possibly see just having a Sean O'Malley versus Devin Haney fight. But regardless, though, outside of financial gain for Sean O'Malley potentially, and maybe a big gain for Devin Haney if this were to be video on the boxing aspect, this makes no sense in both their careers. The only time a crossover fight makes sense to me is when you have it at a position in their careers when both guys are firmly established, have solidified their legacies, and are at a standpoint in their careers where it's the back end. They're just looking to make some final fights to cash out, to make money, to utilize their brand, and just they want to stay active and fight. And that's the only time it really makes sense. Both of these guys are still young. Sean O'Malley doesn't even have a championship right now. Devin Haney relinquished his. Both guys are coming off of a loss, essentially, right? Obviously, Devin Haney's been rectified, doesn't have a loss any longer. But in terms of what the perception is from the people looking at them, they're not in a good position to go have this massive fight, as opposed to if it was, 6, 7, 8 months ago when Haney's the champion, O'Malley's the champion, could have been big. So this makes no sense at this point in time. Maybe one day. But for the foreseeable future and for right now, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like I said, these fights need to occur back end of your career. Legacy is already established. Go cash out, make these big fights happen, because I don't think it can even happen right now today anyways. But if it were to occur, it just makes no sense outside of maybe a financial gain. But regardless of that, I'm not a big fan on that possibly occurring. So we'll see what happens unfolding there. But supposedly there's rumors, and it could occur. They have Devin Haney, Sean O'Malley crossover fight, whether that be an MMA style or boxing, that's to be determined. But those are both potentially on the table as of now. So that's something to definitely keep an eye on. Who knows what's going to occur out there. That being said, though, I appreciate all you guys for tuning in today. I hope you guys all enjoyed today's SchuZ Show. And I'm your host, Zach SchuZ Shoemaker. Appreciate you guys all for tuning in once again. These clips will be split up and distributed in the future days. But I just appreciate you guys all for tuning in, that tuned in live right now, that will tune into this later on after it's been recorded. I hope God will bless you guys. I pray you guys have an incredible day and get closer to God and just enjoy your relationship with Him and experience the fullness of a relationship and walk with Jesus Christ. So I appreciate you guys all for tuning in today. I plan on being back on Friday. I'll let you guys know when I go live, but I appreciate you guys all for tuning in here once again. May God bless you guys all, and I hope you guys have an incredibly blessed day, end of your night, whatever you guys are when you guys tune into this, and may God bless you guys all. SchuZ is out. God bless.